West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't understand why this is an issue.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 6 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710, KNUS. Happy April Fool's Day to you, Bill. Are you a fooly type of guy?
No, not necessarily. My wife's very good at it, but
yeah. Did you wake up to any fooly activities in the house?
Way too early. Way too early for everybody else. So I avoid that. My wife does. Yeah, my kids are decent at it, so we'll see. How about you guys? What about in your family?
We'll throw some stuff in there. I'm trying to remember some of the April Fools we did over the years. I'm just getting old, man.
Oh, yes.
They don't
old
stick
sucks.
out in my mind anymore.
Yeah. Some of my kids have pulled off some great ones, too. That's one of the ones that lives in infamy in our family is years ago, my oldest pulled off a great prank on my dad, and it was a time in which we were lucky enough to have two of my aunts watching the kids during the day when they were younger, as far as childcare at the time. And they had my oldest call my dad and say that he needed help because my aunt had left him at the grocery store. And so my dad gets a little upset and then asks about what grocery store and where is it? Okay, I'm going to be there. Stand right here. I'll be there soon, etc. And eventually it's, April Fool. Sorry about that, Grandpa, etc. And he starts laughing. And as soon as they hang up, it's my aunt that goes, hang on a sec. He thought I actually would have left my nephew at the store. Like, wait a minute. Wait, what does this say about my ability and skills? So there have been a couple of those type of things where my kids have been able to call and fool both my parents and my in-laws with a variety of different things. Those have been the best because the in-laws don't expect the younger kids to be in on the prank. So that's basically it. The ones that my mom did as we were little were fun. My wife likes some of the little tiny pranks, things like the squirt nozzle in the kitchen. Just putting the rubber band around it. So things like that, little things. She also will call and do things like every once in a while. I remember when the kids were younger, would wake them up and go, oh my gosh, it snowed. You have a snow day at school today. What, snow day? Nope, sorry, April Fools. Yeah, things like that, which seems just cruel, but you should do that to kids sometimes. That's about it. What ones do you remember? What about your family and stuff?
I can't remember really any this
you
morning.
You blocked them out, have you? Trauma. Yes.
But you and I did get a message from our operations manager reminding us that many radio hosts have lost their jobs on April Fool's Day. So be careful out there.
Yes, I know. I was thinking about that yesterday afternoon before I saw the message and was like, no, we probably shouldn't do something
We did
weird.
one as a company. So I ran a political consulting advertising agency for 3 years or something like that. And we came out with an April Fool's that we had developed an algorithm that allowed us to predict elections.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, that's good. That's really good.
So
that's a good
You can hire us, and we'll actually just predict how it will go.
Predict how it'll go. That's fantastic. That's good.
So we'd love to hear from you, because I do like April Fool's Day. It's 6 in the morning. I can't come up with any in my mind as to the ones we did with our families over the years, but we'd love to hear from you if you got some good ones. 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Someone who's always joking with us, Blake Olson. It's playing the audio, but not playing the audio.
No, it's not playing
April
the audio.
Fools.
Hang on a sec here. Let's see if we do this. Hey, there it is. All right.
Hey, all right. 38 and clear in Denver. April Fools.
Are you a fooly guy? You got some pranks planned for the kids?
Not anymore, man. Right? I remember a few that we've done in the past. I had 3 brothers, so we did some good ones growing up. But nothing comes to mind. And, as you said, the older you get, it's like, golly, some of this stuff seems like a joke, that we lived through. And it can't even compare
the 8 years
to
of
the
Barack
reality.
Obama, April Fools.
Right. Guess what? You're going to have a communist as president. I'm not a big April Fool's Day guy, believe it or not, even though it's great to have those jokes. I love it. We are expecting a high of 56. That's no joke. The 710 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, more than 600 flights were delayed at DIA on Monday due to the wind. Hopefully a better day today. And as we said, almost everything seems fake this day and age. But here's AG Pam Bondi.
I've made it clear, if you take part in the wave of domestic terrorism against Tesla properties, we will find you, arrest you, and put you behind bars. Today, I'm proud to announce that the Department of Justice has unsealed federal charges against another Tesla attacker. We've charged Cooper Frederick in the firebombing of a Tesla dealership that occurred on March 7th in Loveland, Colorado. All of these cases are a serious threat to public safety. Therefore, there will be no negotiating. We are seeking 20 years in prison. The crime was committed in Colorado, and thanks to the great investigative work by the FBI, the defendant was arrested in Plano, Texas. Let this be a warning. You can run, but you cannot hide. Justice is coming.
And Elon says there should be another arrest today concerning Social Security fraud.
I believe someone is going to be arrested tomorrow. This is someone who actually stole 400,000 Social Security numbers and personal information from the Social Security database, and was selling Social Security numbers and all the identification information in order for people to basically steal money from Social Security.
Voters in Wisconsin and Florida are getting ready to head to the polls in what is a national political power struggle. Today in Wisconsin, there's a state Supreme Court election, and Elon is doing whatever he can to help get Wisconsin voters to the polls. And as we know, he's risking his life to help the republic. Every day is dangerous.
I got 17,000 death threats, not a few, 17,000 about going to talk in Wisconsin, in Green Bay. I still went.
Florida voters will decide two pivotal vacant House seats that could help to shift the balance of power nationally. DJT says some $5 trillion in U.S. investments can be expected after his tariffs take effect. New reciprocal tariffs are set to take effect against Canada, Mexico, China, and the European Union. The White House says that will undo decades of them taking advantage of the U.S. The people of France wanted Marine Le Pen to lead them, but their communists used lawfare again on her Monday, just like what the commie Democrats did here against DJT last summer. The president commented on Monday.
People thought she wasn't going to be convicted of anything, and I don't know if it means conviction, but she was banned for running for 5 years, and she's the leading candidate. That sounds like this country. That sounds very much like this country.
Which is really sad to even hear that. Police in Aurora called to the Orr Community Center on Sunday night after windows were broken and a door was shattered. A representative of the synagogue says surveillance video shows someone using a rock to break the glass around the building. The bias-motivated crimes detective is investigating. Nearly $9 billion worth of Harvard University contracts are under review by the feds over the school's handling of anti-Semitism. The Departments of Education, Health, and Human Services and the U.S. General Services Administration are conducting the review. Senator Cory Booker blabbed on and on last night on the Senate floor, taking aim at 47 and Elon. He criticized what he called the Trump administration's reckless actions and said the U.S. is in crisis. He is correct. Lefty commies like him continue to attack we the people on a daily basis and ignore the will of the people. So we are in a crisis. United Airlines will soon begin offering Starlink internet service on its regional jets. The airline announced on Monday that it now has FAA approval, and the first commercial flight of Starlink equipment aircraft is planned for May. United expects to equip more than 300 planes with the technology by the end of the year. News brought to you by the Lair Fireplace. And Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills. Locally owned and operated since 1954. Online at lairfireplacepatio.com. T-Wolves at the Nuggets tonight. Flames beat the Avs 3-2. Phillies over the Rockies 6-1. They're now 1-3. And opening day coming up on Friday once again.
Blake, are you going to opening day?
Man, I would love to, but I don't think we're going to be able to get down there. But
it's going to be a chilly one, too.
Yeah, because you said it was going to be cold.
48 degrees.
That's just a bummer, man.
But this whole week, man.
I know.
It's chilly.
And you knew that it was going to happen because it was so beautiful last week.
Yeah, right.
So... yeah, that's too bad. Hopefully something will break and still be a good day. Maybe they can get a win.
Someone was texting in. I don't remember this, but best April Fools was when Pete and the rest of the 710 KNUS staff pretended KNUS went to a Spanish format in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that was good.
Billy was explaining
really
it. That was before my radio time. So what was the story there?
Basically, we had the Spanish broadcasting station at the time, and Kevin and Jose, who are here at the time, Jorge Cruz, last name's Cruz, was the guy that was working here. And so Casey Bloyer and Pete Boyles had the idea to go Spanish. There had been kind of a running gag about the Spanish stations coming in and taking over radio stations for quite a while. Those people that remember 96.5 The Peak may recall, I believe it was the 90s or early 2000s, when The Peak went Spanish for a day as El Pico. And the funny thing is there were machinations at the time about Spanish language broadcasting sniffing around that signal. They now own that signal. It is now Spanish broadcasting. So what was joked about did become true. In fact, I think, oh gosh, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe KTCL sent a mariachi band over to the Peak because they were competitors at the time. So I think that's awesome. The kind of thing that happened. So leaning on that type of an idea, what Pete and Casey did was they brought in Kevin and Jorge from the other station and had them kind of bust in and say, no, we're taking over, and literally kick them off the air and become a Spanish language station for the morning. So it was really done because they were both radio guys and they understood it. It wasn't just getting someone that comes in here to speak Spanish. They understood the gimmick behind it and did a Spanish-focused morning show. If you could speak Spanish, you got it. They were making jokes and they were having fun and doing a whole bunch of other stuff, and they were making fun of the gringos, and it was really well done. Yeah, that is fantastic. That was a good one.
That was long before TDA.
Yes, long before. Yes, long before.
I put into Grok what were some of the very best April Fool's jokes in history. Here's one from 1957. The BBC aired a segment on its respected news.
Spaghetti trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of the best of all time. Spaghetti trees, yeah.
Yeah, the Swiss spaghetti harvest of 1957, claiming that Swiss farmers were enjoying a bumper spaghetti crop.
Yeah.
Thanks to a mild winter and the elimination of the spaghetti weevil.
Yep, and they had pictures. It was fantastic. That is a classic one. That is a really good one. That's really good. Yes.
See, what I'm not good at is stretching it out. You know, a good April Fool's Day joke, you need to let it go for like 2, 3, 4 hours. You know.
Yeah.
And I just want to give it. I want to give it up in like 30 seconds. And Pete did a good job that morning, and all those guys involved, they did a great job on that April Fool's Day joke. I do remember this early in my career, April 1st, when we used to have a news wire. and I would rip it off and read it, look at it when I was at a television station in the Springs, and it was April 1st, and I didn't believe it. I was like, no way, this is an April Fool's joke. But Brent Musburger was fired on April 1, whatever year that was, 1990 or something like that, from CBS, and that was a big deal because Musburger was basically the voice of CBS Sports, and that was it, man. He was done. They fired him on April 1st, so I'll never forget that one. I thought it was the April Fool's Day joke, but it wasn't.
They couldn't have waited like 24 hours. That's just crazy.
Right.
I mean,
Or at least just the day
even
before.
Trump gets it. That's why the tariffs don't start till tomorrow.
Right, exactly. No, you just never know. Watch your back today.
So I guess people were calling in on that BBC one to ask if they could grow their own spaghetti trees.
Yeah, there are all sorts of things.
And you place
Yeah.
a sprig of spaghetti in a tin of tomato sauce and hope for the best.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
That
I
is
love
a
it.
good one. Wow.
That is a good one. All right, 36 in Lone Tree, 37 in Thornton, 38 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
We're seeing massage chairs and that do more things than ever before.
Yeah, I like that one. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Well,
A
President
cool
Trump
and
is
unsettled
floating
stretch
the
of weather will
idea
continue here
of whether
for
he
Denver
might
through
serve
this
a
work week
third
and
term.
probably
Could
all
that
the way
actually
through
happen?
Saturday.
White House
Temperatures will be low to
correspondent and
mid-50s today, cloudy
constitutional
with a
attorney.
few rain
I did
and
not
snow
know that
showers
about
around
him.
the area
But
today
John
and tonight.
Decker's
Lows
going to
lower
join
30s,
us with the story.
40s and lower
Could
50s.
this
Wednesday,
be
a
an
few
April
showers,
Fool's
a
Day
few
joke?
showers.
John Decker, thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, it sounds like it, right? That's a good one. I haven't heard that one yet, but we're talking about Donald Trump and what he's throwing out there as a possibility, a third term in the White House, running again in 2028. The problem with that, of course, is the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution, which bars an individual from serving 3 terms in the White House. There's a way around it. That's repealing the 22nd Amendment. That's really difficult. It requires 2/3 votes in both the House and the Senate. That's difficult given the very narrow majority that Republicans have in both bodies. And then if you were able to do that, you then need 3/4 of the states to ratify that amendment to the Constitution. That, too, is very difficult. And so the president, I think, is doing what other presidents in his position have done before, mulled over the possibility. Even President Eisenhower did that in 1960, but he realized the 22nd Amendment prevents that from occurring, and that's the reason why he didn't run for a third term in the White House.
We're talking with John Decker, White House correspondent. I noticed the New York Times had a piece out kind of mulling through the strategy, too. Maybe Trump wants to keep any ideas of somebody who wants to jump in now out, or the idea that he's a lame duck president. We don't want to talk about that because he's considering a third term. But we hosted Steve Bannon here in Colorado at the Colorado Republican Party fundraiser over the weekend. He brought up a third term. So it's not just the president. It seems like some around him want to continue to push the idea of a third term. Do you think there's some alternative strategies out there? For instance, not reminding people he's a lame duck president at this point.
Well, there's a possibility that was brought up to the president, this idea of having his vice president, J.D. Vance, run in 2028 with Donald Trump as the number 2 on the ticket. And then upon winning the White House, J.D. Vance resigns and essentially hands the keys over to the White House to Donald Trump. I don't see J.D. Vance subscribing to that plan. He's a pretty ambitious guy that wants to be president. He's not just going to run for president only to hand the keys over to the White House, over to Donald Trump. Now,
well, actually, John, if I can interrupt there just for a sec. If I can interrupt just for a sec,
Yeah.
this 12th Amendment prevents that from happening. The tail end of the 12th Amendment
the 12th
says
Amendment, you're
anybody
right.
that is
The 12th
ineligible,
Amendment's problematic.
Yeah, if you're ineligible
Yeah.
to run for president, you can't run as vice. That's the last sentence in the 12th, so that would prevent that from happening.
That's exactly right. So that's the reason why, for instance, you remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor of California, this idea of putting him on the ticket, he's not a natural-born citizen, which makes him ineligible to be president of the United States. That was problematic for him in terms of being on a presidential ticket. Well, the same thing would apply to Donald Trump, that 12th Amendment that you just cited, because of the eligibility requirements contained in the 12th Amendment to the Constitution.
Well, John Decker, White House correspondent, joining us this morning to give us an update on whether or not President Trump is really seeking a third term. Appreciate your time this morning,
Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
So speaking of that, Bill, in 1992, National Public Radio aired a segment claiming that former President Richard Nixon, who had resigned in disgrace in 1974, was running for office again with the slogan, I didn't do anything wrong and I won't do it again. The voice was provided by an impersonator, but listeners believed it, flooding NPR with calls, some outraged, others intrigued, until the hoax was revealed as an April Fool's Day joke.
That's a good one.
I love that line. I didn't do anything wrong and I won't do it again.
Yeah, I won't do it again. That's a good line. That's a really good line.
I mean, I'm going to play some audio from Steve Bannon here when we come back, because he was at both CPAC and the Colorado Republican Party fundraiser calling for a third term for Donald Trump. Look, it was outlandish when a dude went down a escalator when he was a reality TV star claiming to run for president, and now we've had him twice as a president. Is this that outrageous? We'll get to your phone calls and texts, but you're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A cool and unsettled stretch of weather will continue here for Denver through this work week and probably all the way through Saturday. Temperatures will be low to mid-50s today, cloudy with a few rain and snow showers around the area today and tonight, lows lower 30s. 40s and lower 50s Wednesday, a few showers of rain and snow with low to mid-40s Thursday into Thursday night, and areas of rain and snow Friday and Saturday. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Great conversation with John Decker as to whether or not Donald Trump is actually seeking a third term. And it's not just Trump bringing this up. Steve Bannon did. I noticed this at CPAC. And in fact, we're the only ones really talking about this. This is Steve Bannon at CPAC initially floating the idea. And you have to understand, CPAC is a place where you can introduce ideas and test them to see how people will respond.
The future of America is MAGA, okay? And the future of MAGA is Donald J. Trump. We want Trump in 28. That's what they can't stand. A man like Trump comes along only once or twice in a country's history, right? We want Trump. We want Trump. We want Trump. We want Trump.
All right, so that was Steve Bannon at CPAC starting to float the idea out there. He wants to gauge what the interest is from the MAGA conservative movement. We talked about it when he first did that. Okay. Well, then he comes to the Colorado Republican Party, and I think we're the only ones that have this audio. We're playing it this morning. Here's Bannon Friday at the Colorado Republican Party fundraiser.
And that brings me to 2028. Now, he ain't going to be running against Polis because Polis ain't going to get out of the first couple of primaries, right? I think Governor Shapiro and Wes Moore and Governor Whitmer, see, they got these brackets. It's like March Madness. They got the governor's bracket. And the governor's bracket's pretty. That's why Newsom, you would never know he's governor of California. He wants to get in the celebrity bracket. He wants to get with Stephen A. Smith and Mark Cuban and Rahm Emanuel and that crowd, right? He don't want to be in the governor's. That's a tough bracket. That bracket will chew up Jared Polis and spit him out as the lightweight he is. So in 2028, I made my endorsement. It's Trump. A man like Trump comes along once in a nation's history. Hell, we're blessed by God in heaven and have had two. We had General Washington at the birth of the nation, the revolution and the birth of this country. We had Abraham Lincoln at the rebirth of this nation. And we had Donald John Trump to make America great again and renew this nation. Look at what he's learned in the 4 years he was gone. Look how tight this thing is run. And look how these jackals are after him every day. And I'm telling you, people came back on the 5th of November. It was great. Everybody was celebrating. And then the transition, they're all celebrating. And then they come to the inauguration. They're all dressed up. They're celebrating. I said, that's fine. That's good. Celebrate. Celebrate. But within the first 100 days, get your pitchforks out. Get your bayonets ready. Because they're going to be coming for Trump. They got to stop it now. That's why they got these radical federal judges are the anvil and the deep state's the hammer, and that's what they hope to crush Trump on, right? They've got to go with these Marxist judges and the entire apparatus that hasn't been taken apart yet. He's going to need more than 4 years to that, and I've got a plan. I'm not going to share it with you yet. People on the media say, oh, Bannon, this is just more crazy. Say, hey, I saw Trump in 14 at Dave Bossi's cattle call on May 1st, I think it was, up in New Hampshire, Hanover, New Hampshire, and Rand Paul, all of them there, Ted Cruz, all good men and women, all there. Saw Trump, and I told Bossi, I said, that guy's going to be president of the United States as a Republican. And then on the afternoon of 20 January 2021, told the whole staff, we're not leaving D.C., everybody's leaving, we're staying right here. We got to be the anchor, we got to be the rally point, the hill, the war room's got to do it. Because Trump's coming back, and Trump's going to win the nomination, and Trump's going to be the president of the United States. And I don't care if Ron DeSantis on Fox News at a town hall every night of the week. And I don't care if Nikki Haley's on a town hall or Chris Christie. It doesn't matter. The logic of American history said Trump was coming back, and Trump's going to win, and Trump's going to return this nation to its greatness. A man like that only comes along every 100 years if you're lucky as a country. We got to play this hand out. We have to play this hand out.
because the country hangs in the balance.
All right, that's Steve Bannon at the Colorado Republican Party fundraiser on Friday. So you can see now he's starting to get more aggressive with it. He started floating it in a 30-second soundbite at CPAC. Now you got a 3-minute conversation at the Colorado Republican Party about Trump taking on a third term. Then reporters starting to ask Donald Trump about this, saying that he may, and Donald Trump himself saying that there were methods to circumvent the 2-term limit set out by the 22nd Amendment. Mr. Trump has not specified those methods. And there are no apparent signs that he's actually laying the groundwork for a third term, they say. Now, if you remember, we were at the little press conference. We were like 2 media outlets that were at this little press conference at CPAC where people were organizing in support of Andy Ogles of Tennessee and his long shot amendment to the Constitution to make Trump eligible for a third term. But the New York Times says that all this that's happening is just smoke and mirrors. And the reason why is Trump doesn't want conversation about who's going to succeed him yet. He doesn't want to be thought of as a lame duck president. He wants the power to be able to go to Congress and tell them what to do and not be seen as somebody on their way out. And he doesn't want talk of J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, who's going to succeed him, all that stuff. He wants the focus on him. And so when you get all worked up about this and you think this could actually happen, you're falling right into his own plans. Bill, what do you think?
Well, I think the New York Times has part of it correct. I think this is more a distraction away from the signal crisis and letting our enemies know that we are very loose and fast with security protocols, that even though our Secretary of Defense says that operational security is clean, he did it while a journalist was in the chat. So nice job there. Well done. That's definitely proven your merit for deserving that job. Also, the fact that he's got huge tariffs coming in, enormous tariffs that are going to impact a lot of different industries and especially American consumers. So that's why I think this has been given legs. And the reporter that asked him about it, again, a very, very, very bad job of journalism. You suck. You're absolutely horrible.
And important, not John Decker. We're not talking about John Decker.
No, not John Decker. No. I forgot the reporter that asked over the weekend because it was a dumb question. And then the problem I had was while he's running through it, she's nodding going, right. No, he wasn't right at all. No, not at all. This, although I did think it was funny in Bannon's statement there, he's got a kind of, again, I understand that he's up there speaking for a while, but he starts off saying Trump comes along once in the history of a country. And then he talks about Washington and Lincoln, and then he says, oh, no, every 100 years. So we got to figure out which one it is. Is it only once in 100 years, once in a country, history, etc.? I think this is a lot of distraction. Now, does Donald Trump have a method? Yes, absolutely. Ignoring the Constitution. Yes. Deciding that we don't care what the Constitution says? Yes, absolutely. And has he done that before? Yep, absolutely. Birthright citizenship. Yep. He thinks that he can, through executive fiat, change the Constitution. Absolutely.
He's not trying to change the Constitution.
Yes,
he's challenging, and he has every right to do this under the separation of powers, that interpretation, because when that amendment was put into place, it had nothing to do with the idea that 10 million people were coming into our country illegally and having babies. It had to do with slaves.
Some of the original court cases don't deal with slaves. So that's in all acts. In all
later court cases, like in the 80s.
They don't deal with the idea of slavery.
So you're not talking about the Constitution, you're talking about precedent.
Yeah, and that's his precedent.
And
so that's fine.
Precedent changes.
But the issue is this. Yeah, it does. But the issue being that if he thought this was really a path forward, change the Constitution. Do the hard work. Be the president. Stop being a king. Don't do it through executive fiat. If you think this is a good idea, and this is the challenge I have for Republicans, you think it's a good idea that you would need to change the Constitution to give Donald Trump a third term? Do it. Why are you guys sitting around in your hands and going home and having 5-day weekends in Congress? I mean, what, you guys have worked 12 days, maybe this entire session so far? If this is such a dire need for this country, if we are at this precipice, as Steve Bannon says, that the balance of America hangs in the future, oh my God, I'm so scared, then why can't Congress get off their ass? If it's really that important, do it. It's
Now,
that simple.
when we talked to the Republicans and conservatives that were introducing this idea of amending the Constitution to it, they said that Donald Trump's term is going to be so successful, there's going to be so much wealth and success in this country that the people are going to demand it, so much so that even the Democrats are going to have to support a third term of Donald Trump.
The Constitution doesn't allow it, though. And there's going to be somebody
Right,
that'll
well,
file.
I mean, that constitutional change.
But they have to do it.
Right.
And here's the problem.
That's what they're saying. It's going to be so successful.
Here's the problem.
That, of course, the Democrats are going to want to change the Constitution.
Have you seen how well our Congress governs by catastrophe as far as they push everything down the road? We haven't been able to pass a budget in how many years, and we keep going with a continuing resolution. And what happens with those continuing resolutions? Are they wrapped up weeks before the deadline? No, days before the deadline. So
hours.
If this is really the idea that the country is going to be so prosperous that we are primed for another Trump term, you've got to do the hard work today to get the amendment through Congress to then get it to the states, because it has to be ratified by every state. That's going to take a while.
Now, Bill.
The fact that they're waiting tells me this is complete and total bupkis.
New York Times reporting on Monday that a Fox News reporter, seemingly trying to bait Mr. Trump, asked him a hypothetical question. If he were allowed to run for a third term, would the Democrats try to run former President Barack Obama against him? Mr. Obama already served 2 terms and has shown zero interest in running for elected office again. Trump saying, I would love that. That would be a good one. Is that the rumble we're all waiting for? 2028, Barack Obama versus Donald J. Trump? Would you want Obama to have a third term?
No, because I think the idea of 2 is fine, because as long as we continue to extend these terms, then we're just moving to an authoritarian. We might as well just name someone king and then allow them to name a successor, because that's not, again, I find it strange that so many people that clutch tightly to originalism, that clutch tightly to the words that are in the Founding Fathers document, now go, because I like this guy, let's change him now.
I don't know if so many people. I've heard 2 so far, Donald Trump and Bannon. Let's go to the phone lines. Joe and Arvada. Good morning, Joe. You're on the Jeff and Bill show.
Good morning, Jeff and Bill. Well, first of all, it's April Fool's. Happy April Fool's.
Yeah, happy April Fool's.
Billy, have you ever been snipe hunting?
No, I have not, but I know about that one. Although, similarly, when I was a very young kid, basically instead of snipe hunting, they took me out asparagus hunting and played me pretty well as far as what you had to do to get the asparagus. And I was not very clever back then, and I was very young and stupid. And so, yes, basically the same thing. It's the same thing, hunting asparagus. Yes, absolutely.
Well, Billy, I think President Trump has brought you along now because you're already holding the bag and the flashlight.
Oh, good. Excellent. In what way?
Well, that's, I think, what's going on with the third term thing. Now, I do understand that that's floating it out there to see what people, especially the left, they run around like, with their chicken feathers in the air, screaming and cackling. And just like that, the snipe hunter, you took the bait.
Now, Joe, I got to ask you about that. I got to ask you about taking the bait. If this is all about Donald Trump and taking the bait and owning the libs, why is Bannon spending 3 minutes on it in front of a bunch of Republican donors? There isn't a Democrat in that room. Why is he spending 3 minutes raising money for the Colorado Democrats, but spending 3 minutes on a Trump term that you say is just there to own the libs? Why spend that amount of time on it?
I think that's one reason they're doing it, is to suck in all of the cackling crowd with the bags and the flashlights, because if you're sucked in by that, then you're taking your focus off of other things. Now,
yeah, but Joe, hang on. I'm going back to the audience though. Why is Bannon saying that to a Republican donor audience? We had to go to a second or third tier social media site.
We love the idea of a third term.
I know that, but what I'm saying is, if this is just to own the libs, we had to go to like a third
meat.
But we had to go to a third tier social media site in order to get it. Why feed it to the Republican donors if it's to own the libs? Why
you
feed it to
do
them?
get what red meat is, right? I
Yeah.
mean, when you're at the conventions, they throw out red meat. That's what this is. Now, do I
But I
think
thought it
it
was
could
to
really
own the libs.
happen? Well, here's the thing. Now, if Trump is wildly successful, I think there will be a clamor for him. Oh, yes, Billy. And you're way, way off base on how popular President Trump is. That's what the left constantly cackles in the media. Imagine if the media wasn't completely left. Even the so-called conservative media is now moderately left. Excuse me. The point is that this took the focus off of that, and all the views and everything are running around screaming, he's
that's what I said.
talking about his third term! He's talking about his third term!
Yeah, that's what I started with, though. In New York Times, I said they were wrong. That this is to take focus off of the signal issue and the tariff issue. That's why this is floated.
Well, the signal issue, now, I do think that the signal issue is real. And I think what would be great is that when they arrest Jeffrey Goldberg, that would be awesome. When they get him for trying to reveal war secrets, and he
but we were
may
told they
not
weren't
have
secrets.
been put on. Just a moment. He may not have been put on the signal chat by accident. It might have been the CIA that put him on.
Yeah, and that would be easy to prove.
Some little Vindman in there. Now, I think that signals should be used. Well, it was an approved method of ordinary chat. I mean, does everything need to be in a skiff for the presidency? I don't know. Well, here's the thing. What did it matter? Not in the least. Let's see. All Houthis, they got their heads blown off. Let's see. It's a wildly successful attack. Now let's look at the Afghanistan withdrawal. Was that successful? Oh, you got people dropping off of airplanes. Where was everybody? Where was Jeffrey Goldberg screaming in the streets when 13 Americans and 150 Afghanis were killed?
That or Jason Crow, for instance. Yep. Joe Arvada.
Jason Crow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Joe, great call. Sure, appreciate it. We got You Choose the News coming up. Have a very happy April Fool's Day. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It's that time of the morning. The audience demands it. You choose the news.
Yes, it's that time of the morning where we get to play America's favorite fake radio news game show, You Choose the News. It is something that nobody in charge has any idea that we are doing and being this irresponsible with valuable air's time. Yes, how does it work? I've scoured the interwebs for moments this morning for crazy stories about us humans, giving them even more ridiculous headlines to play this fake radio news game show. Again, it's a giant secret. Shh, there's no way anybody in charge would let us to do this if they found out about it. So it is just our secret. Blake Olson joining us from the news department, Jeff Hunt in the studio. Gentlemen, here are today's stories. Headline number 1, lightening the load. Headline number 2, it fell off the back of a truck. Headline number 3, famous but not for herbs and spices. And headline number 4, sorry, too big. Mr. Hunt.
Fell off the back of a truck.
Yeah, this just fell off the back of the truck. At least that's the story, and I'm sticking to it. A fake trucking company recently stole 80,000 pounds of beef from Bean Station, Tennessee meatpacking plant. This happened on Thursday, March 27th. They got away with over $350,000 in meat. Now, officers were called to the Southeastern Provisions on Helton Road to speak with a shipping manager of the company. He said, 2 customers hadn't received their shipments. They were wondering what happened. Well, turns out List Trucking Sales pulled up at the Southeast Provisions and said, we are now the subcontractor and we are delivering the meat. They weren't a real trucking company. It was not really verified. They didn't verify that they were even part of the subcontracting business, but they did give them 80,000 pounds of meat that is delicious and loaded up into the trucks and has since disappeared.
Wow.
2 separate loads were picked up, so they didn't just get away with the scam once, they got away with it twice. The shipments were going to go to Kentucky, other one going to Michigan. So far, they are still searching for it, and no arrests have been made. But again,
I'm just going to roll up to the In-N-Out Burger factory.
Exactly. $350,000 and evidently don't check the paperwork very well. That's not good at all. Yeah,
Doge.
I know. So someone has got their performance review is going to really suck this year. Yeah. All righty. Now, Blake Olson, sir, your choices: lightening the load, famous but not for herbs and spices, or sorry, too big.
Sorry, too big.
Yeah, sorry, too big. That's the argument that Michael Tansey of 48 is making right now. Now, Tansey is saying, guys, I'm just too big. Why does that matter? Well, Tansey was found guilty of murdering Janet Acosta in 2003, and he is set to face the death penalty at Florida State Prison. However, his defense team has been desperately trying to prevent him from being the 11th person to be put to death in America since the start of the year by claiming he's just too fat. You can't put a fat guy to death. You can't possibly do that. The idea that they're saying is that his obese weight would make the execution unlawful and lead to needless suffering, unlike that of his victim. That might add that one. They argued that in the current death penalty protocols, it couldn't be applied to someone that was suffering from obesity or an illness associated with it because the drugs may not work the same way because of his morbid obesity, which, again, if this is true, would mean anybody in death row should just get really, really fat. Again, this is just phenomenally stupid. But yes, he is saying he should not be executed because he is too fat. And I just want to remind Mr. Tansey, shooting you in the arm with a needle isn't the only way we could choose. we could go with some other things. They may not be as pleasant, and they may hurt a lot.
There may be some things out of the question now. Hanging, for instance.
Yeah, exactly, hanging. But
may not work anymore.
But something that is very popular on the show, pushing people out of airplanes, that may work real well. So I'm just saying there are options, sir. Don't just say that because I'm too fat, you can't put the needle in my arm. There may be some other things we can do here. We probably could shoot you a number of times. Yes, exactly. Could shoot him a couple of times. There are a couple of things. A guillotine might still work, but it might take 2 chops. But I'm just saying, don't push for this. Don't force us to come up with other options here. Alrighty.
Speaking of meat,
yes. And our final choice this morning, Mr. Hunt: lightening the load or famous but not for herbs and spices.
Famous.
Yes, famous but not for herbs and spices. A Japanese restaurant chain, Sukiya, is reportedly going to shutter all of their 2,000 restaurants across the country because recently diners have found not only a bug in a meal, but also a rat in the miso soup. Yeah, they are famous across the country for their beef bowls. They apologized recently in a statement saying they're sorry about the contaminations, and they're going to go ahead and shutter all of their locations, clean everything up, look at their food processing, and then try to reopen and hope that nobody remembers about the bugs or the rats.
Jeez.
Yeah, I know. But at least all 2,000.
They're going to close them all, then reopen them?
Yeah, they're going to close them all and reopen them and try to relaunch and say, hey, we cleaned up all the rats. We promise they're dead this time.
I
and
don't
not in the
have
soup.
a problem with the bugs. It's just the rats.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That is the end of You Choose the News. Back to you, sir.
That's why you have a problem with politics, too.
Yes.
All right, we'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
It is 7 a.m. in the Mile High City on this April 1st, Tuesday, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. We've got a great hour lined up for you. Rep. Jarvis Caldwell is going to be joining us here in a little bit on this new bill being introduced rapidly down at the state capitol. Legal protections for transgender individuals. Huh, interesting. What type of legal protections? How about you could get in trouble if you dead name or misgender somebody, now considered a discriminatory act in the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act. Is this a violation of free speech? We're going to talk with Representative Caldwell here in a second. Rory O'Neill's going to join us a little bit later on the history of April Fool's Day, which is today. So a whole lot to talk about. Let's go to the phone lines real quick here, Bill. Frank in Georgia. Good morning, Frank. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, good morning. I appreciate iHeartRadio. I get to hear you guys all the way across the country.
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks for listening. So what's on your mind? You want to talk about Trump in a third term?
Well, it's been a little while. I'm 62 years old. I used to live in Broomfield, but when they made us take a government class, that amendment allowed somebody to be president for 10 years, as I recall, to allow for vice president to ascend to president.
Yeah, you're
so
right.
Maybe he's playing that 2-year card.
Well, the problem that he has is the 12th. Is the tail end of the 12th Amendment outlines that anybody that is ineligible for president can't hold the office of vice president. But you're correct about the 10 years, and I thought, and again, I was wrong at the time, but I thought that was the play for the Democrats getting Biden in. I thought that what the Democrats were going to do was have Biden have some sort of a medical thing happen about 2 years into his term and put Kamala into that seat. That way, Kamala would get to run as an incumbent in the next election. And in theory, the Democrats could capture 10 years worth of the White House. That's what I thought they were going to do. But Biden blew that whole thing up because he decided, I can still run again, which we all knew was fake. And they couldn't, and he couldn't. And that was borne out. But that's what I thought was going to happen. But yeah, the 12th would prevent Trump because he would be ineligible for president for a third term unless we change the Constitution. He couldn't run as vice.
Oh, well, I was thinking he'd be president and then just step aside 2 years in. I mean, nobody's ever tried that as far as I know, and he's played a lot of different angles.
Yeah, he has, and we'll see. That's an interesting one, Frank.
Oh, interesting. So he doesn't fulfill the full term. Is that what he's saying, Bill? Or Frank?
Yeah, I'm saying he runs, but only for 2 years and steps aside, kind of like y'all were talking about with Biden.
Yeah.
So maybe he'll step aside. I don't know. It's an angle that could be played. Nobody's done it. It'd be interesting.
That is really interesting. Frank, we'll have to remember that because Steve Bannon has not revealed how he plans to allow Trump to serve for a third term, but that's an interesting angle. Frank, really appreciate the call. Thanks so much. All the way from Georgia.
That is really
Frank
cool.
giving us a call. Love that this morning. All right, now it's time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Sunny in Denver. Happy April Fool's Day. Expecting a high of 56 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story.
Despite receiving, at this point, cumulatively 100,000 death threats, I don't know, I've lost count. It was like 16,000, 17,000 just because I was going to give a talk in Wisconsin. Like, I think this is the future of America that's at stake here, and the future of civilization.
Elon continues to fight for freedom despite the death threats and encouraging voters in Wisconsin to vote for the conservative judge today.
I think this election, there's a good chance it decides whether the Republicans or Democrats control the House of Representatives. Because if Brad Schimmel does not win, if the Democrats win, they're going to redraw the Wisconsin district, and Wisconsin voters will be disenfranchised of 2 Republican House votes. That's what's going to happen. This would be catastrophic, and it would destroy the agenda for reform, and really it would make it really almost impossible for the reforms that are underway to take place.
And Florida voters will decide 2 pivotal vacant House seats that could shift the balance of power nationally. Scott Jennings on CNN also encouraging Republicans to get out there.
One of the things the party has to do is condition those people to show up even when Donald Trump is not the person they're voting for. Number two, I think the Elon Musk point that you played earlier about the future of Western civilization, I actually think this is a key issue the Republicans ought to lean in on. It's not just a one-off election when you're voting in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race or some congressional special election in Florida. These things matter. There are ripple effects. A vote here causes major implications on policy down the line. So I think Elon is actually onto something with that messaging, and I hope Republicans, especially the new ones who aren't regular voters, take it to heart.
Back to Doge. Elon says handcuffs may be used today concerning Social Security fraud.
I believe someone is going to be arrested tomorrow. This is someone who actually stole 400,000 Social Security numbers and personal information from the Social Security database, and was selling Social Security numbers and all the identification information in order for people to basically steal money from Social Security.
More than 600 flights were delayed at DIA Monday due to the wind. Hopefully, it'll be a better day today at the airport on April 1st. The people of France wanted Marine Le Pen to lead them, but their commie leaders used lawfare against her on Monday, just like what, the commie Democrats did here against DJT last summer. The president commented on Monday.
People thought she wasn't going to be convicted of anything, and I don't know if it means conviction, but she was banned for running for 5 years, and she's the leading candidate. That sounds like this country. That sounds very much like this country.
They say that she embezzled funds. The Broncos are looking beyond the city limits for a possible location for a new stadium. Co-owner and CEO Greg Penner was asked about a new stadium Monday at the NFL owners meeting in Florida.
We're still looking at the current site, other sites around Denver, Lone Tree, Aurora. We want to create what's the best option for the next 40 or 50 years, not 10 or 20 years. We're continuing our diligence. You know, as I mentioned before, it's complex. We haven't ruled anything out.
Rule this out: us paying for it. Pay for it yourself privately. You have the cash. We don't need that. And you can do it yourself. Buy the land, build the stadium, have fun. A federal judge is throwing out a lawsuit against former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo over thousands who died from COVID-19 in nursing homes. The judge dismissed a proposed class action suit holding Cuomo responsible, calling the claims brought by 8 families legally deficient. The Timberwolves at the Nuggets tonight in Lodo. The Flames beat the Avalanche 3-2, and the Phillies beat the Rockies 6-1. 34 in Castle Rock, 35 in North Glen, 37 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue.
They're like a boa constrictor. They're like a python.
Blake Olson, News Talk 710, KNUS.
A cool and unsettled stretch of weather will continue here for Denver through this work week and probably all the way through Saturday. Temperatures will be low to mid-50s today, cloudy with a few rain and snow showers around the area today and tonight, lows lower 30s. 40s and lower 50s Wednesday, a few showers of rain and snow with low to mid-40s Thursday into Thursday night, and areas of rain and snow Friday and Saturday. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, in a second, we're going to talk with Representative Caldwell about this new bill, House Bill 25-1312. You're never going to believe this one. Legal protections for transgender individuals. That's the name of it. In reality, it could punish you or a business for dead naming or misgendering a person. We'll get into that in a second. I want to talk to you first about my friends over at the Art of Granite. Look, are you ready to transform your kitchen? or bathroom into a stunning masterpiece? Look no further than The Art of Granite, your premier destination for exquisite granite, marble, and quartz countertops. For over 15 years, Mitch Florian, the owner of The Art of Granite, has been crafting and installing custom countertops, fireplaces, showers, and more. Their team of experts will guide you through the selection process, ensuring you find the perfect stone to match your style and budget. Visit their showroom in Golden or browse their online inventory at theartofgranite.com. Discover the endless possibilities for your home renovation project. Listen to this, guys. All you have to do is mention KNUS and get a free bathroom countertop with new kitchen countertops, or choose a free kitchen or bathroom sink with any countertop package. Don't wait. Transform your home into the oasis you deserve. Schedule your free consultation with Mitch today. Go to theartofgranite.com. That's theartofgranite.com. Mention KNUS for these exclusive savings. Transform your kitchen or bathroom dreams into a reality with Art of Granite at theartofgranite.com. All right. This bill being quickly introduced, Representative Jarvis Caldwell just yesterday saying that the bill introduced late Friday evening is scheduled for Judiciary Committee hearing today. No time to analyze, no time to coordinate testimony, no time to talk with stakeholders or constituents or even attorneys. HB 251312, okay, does a lot of bad things, including, all right, if you are in a custody battle and you believe that your child should not be transitioning, you are now going to face some real challenges in the court of law in Colorado. In addition to that, if you are a business that dead names or misgenders anybody, you will be brought before the Colorado Anti-Discrimination organizations, Civil Rights Commission, same people that Jack Phillips was brought before and had to go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court to fight. This is a terrible bill. It's being introduced very quickly. And now joining the Jeff and Bill Show's Representative Jarvis Caldwell to give us some insight. Good morning. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. I appreciate you for having me on short notice.
Yeah, did my analysis get it right? And I'm sure there's some other things that I missed.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. For your listeners here, the context is on Friday evening after we had all left, it looks like this bill was introduced, House Bill 1312. So nobody was tracking it because we all left to go back home to our districts on Friday evening. And then yesterday, just kind of casually, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee said, oh, and by the way, we're adding a new bill to the calendar, House Bill 1312. Well, I was like, what is that? I haven't heard of that bill, and looked it up, and then immediately was like, oh, like, what is this? This is crazy. And so they gave us no time to stakeholders, to talk with people, to get testimony together from constituents. And, call me cynical, but I'm pretty sure this was on purpose.
Well, I think that's definitely the case, too, especially when they're trying to run something very quickly without this type of public comment. Now, I went and looked up whether or not it's illegal in the state of Colorado to use the N-word in a business. And it is. And if you use that word when you're serving a customer, you can be brought before, and there's examples of businesses being brought before the Colorado Civil Rights Commission for violating the Colorado Anti-Discrimination Act if you have an employee that uses the N-word against a black customer. This would essentially do the same thing if you dead name or even misgender somebody. So dead naming is when you refer to somebody by a name that is their previous name, right? Even if it's by accident. Or if you misgender somebody, look, there used to be a Saturday Night Live skit about this. It was called Pat. And people used to kind of laugh that sometimes you just don't know. Now you get it wrong, and you and your business, like Jack Phillips was, can be brought before this Colorado Civil Rights Commission, fined, forced to put your employees through re-education training. This seems like a big leap on the transgender issue. Your thoughts, Representative?
Yeah, I mean, it's so broad. So as you mentioned at the beginning there, the first part of the bill brings in the custody thing. So, you have a spouse, you have custody over your child, your spouse is maybe pushing this gender ideology stuff on the child, and you say, listen, we're going to get you treatment. I think you're confused. You're 5 years old. That is enough to lose custody over your child under this bill. There's no age limits or age ranges on this, so it could be a confused 5-year-old child that you have custody of, and then you lose custody over this child because you're trying to get them treatment. And I think that's what the underlying goal here is, to just try to almost criminalize the treatment of a child if they're confused. But then it also goes into other areas. It goes into education, and it goes into, you can no longer create a dress code that distinguishes between boys and girls. Now, I'm a charter school board member, and we have uniforms, school uniforms, and we have the boys' uniform, we have the girls' uniform. Now, if there's a situation with a transgender child, that's something, there's a process. You bring the parents in, everybody sits down, you discuss it, it's a thing. Now they're saying with this bill, you can't even create the different gendered dress uniforms. And then it goes into the the private sector, as you mentioned, and it talks about any places of public accommodation, which if you look up under the current law, public accommodation is any private business. I mean, it basically covers all of them. So it's so wide ranging. We have these single issue bills, and what they're doing is they're just taking 3 or 4 different areas, and they're all scrunching it down into one.
We're talking with Representative Jarvis Caldwell. There's a new bill being introduced very quickly down at the Colorado State Capitol. In fact, it's going to be heard today. House Bill 25-1312, legal protections for transgender individuals. Now, Representative, what this reminds me of is the conversion therapy bans, and I'll explain why. We were down there. I ran a lobbying operation for Colorado Christian University at the time, and we were down at the state capitol fighting this. And under the guise of wanting to protect people from discrimination and harm, okay, and we even met with Democrat lawmakers saying, look, some of the stories you're bringing up about conversion therapy, where people are being beaten while watching gay porn, for instance, or electroshocked or stuff, that's terrible stuff. We'll stand with you against that. That's abuse, okay? We'll stand with you. But then what they did, and it's now being played out in a challenge going all the way to the Supreme Court, was they forced every counselor in the state of Colorado to only counsel in a single direction, and that was to embrace their LGBTQ identity. So if you have a child, for instance, that goes into a counselor now in the state of Colorado and says, well, I don't really know. I would just like to talk about whether or not I'm dealing with gender dysphoria. Okay? The counselor, by law, is mandated to guide that child into embracing a transgender identity. They can't even explore or ask questions. They have to guide that. So what's happened now is that's fallen under the guise of compelled speech, and it's being challenged all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And my guess is it's going to be found unconstitutional. This sounds like to be very similar in the sense that, look, do we want transgender people being bullied? Absolutely not. Do we want people being abused and harmed and shamed, that type of thing, especially kids? Of course not, okay? But under this, with the way this is written, is that if you're a parent, for instance, in a custody battle, and you believe that your child is not transgender, well, according to this law, the only parent that believes that that child is transgender is going to get custody. If you're a business that doesn't fall in line with the transgender ideology, well, you're going to get punished. That this is going to result in a lot of free speech concerns. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes even further than that. So Section 3 of the bill negates other state laws and court orders, which, in my opinion, violates the full faith and credit clause, which is Article 4, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution, which specifically outlines that states must obey and acknowledge, recognize court decisions from other states. And so what this bill is saying in Section 3 is saying if one parent takes the child and flees to Colorado, and let's say they're coming from Kansas. I don't know their laws about custody, but if a court rules and says you have to bring that child back, you cannot take them there to gender transition them, what this bill is saying is Colorado doesn't have to recognize that law. So just on that ground, to me, it's unconstitutional, plus what you were outlining as far as free speech goes. It's insane. And not only that, it's got a $13 million fiscal note on it in a year where we have a $1.2 billion budget deficit. And so we don't have money for this, but apparently this is a priority for the Democrats in the legislature.
Representative Jarvis Caldwell joining Jeff and Bill live on the air. I got a question because you just talked about the idea of the person ignoring court rulings from another state. The way that I'm reading the proposed law is that if custody was granted or denied based on one parent wanting gender-affirming care and one parent not, that's when this law kicks in. It doesn't really cover any other grounds. So if the idea was that the custody determination was based on we are going to keep the child with the parent that is not going to allow gender-affirming care, is not going to allow them to transition, that's the specific, basic case, or that's the specific parameters that the law outlines. Am I wrong about that?
So I'm driving. I need to look at it again, but what I read specifically in Section 3, it's pretty clear that it will not recognize court orders from a different state, which again,
but there are parameters on that, sir. There are parameters, and it says on it that it's just about gender-affirming care. If the custody decision was made based on denying the child gender-affirming care, then they will ignore the order. They won't just blanket ignore orders from other states. It has to be, according to Section 3, in that narrow definition.
If the custody is made by which state? If it's made by Colorado?
No, another state. If another state makes a custody decision and the reason for the custody decision was to deny the gender-affirming care for the child, then Colorado courts would ignore that. But that's it. It doesn't have any other purview other than just the denial of the gender-affirming care. And we can talk about whether or not that's right or wrong, but that seems to be a fairly narrow definition.
Right, but what you're saying is if another state denies the gender-affirming care, then one of the parents takes the child and flees to Colorado. Colorado won't recognize what the other state had ordered.
Not necessarily. Right? That would only be in a custody case. So even if the parents are not going through a custody battle at the time, that law wouldn't apply. The parents would have to be going through a custody battle at the time in order for that to apply, because that's the parameters inside of Section 3. That's how I'm reading it. I could be completely and totally wrong. Yeah. But the other part that I'm looking at is that when you look at the idea of the gender transition up in Section 1, about who receives gender-affirming care and services, I don't see it necessarily as onerous as you guys are describing. Basically, it's just a matter of who gets control in determining parental responsibilities. I'm not necessarily sure that it is as nefarious as you guys are drawing it out to be between you and Jeff.
Well, here's Section 2, provides that when making child custody decisions and determining the best interests of a child for purposes of parenting time, a court shall consider dead naming, misgendering, or threatening to publish material related to an individual's gender-affirming healthcare services as a type of coercive control.
Yeah.
A court shall consider reports of coercive control when determining the allocation of parental responsibilities in accordance with the best interests of the child. This is putting into law one-way parenting.
No, not at all. Because
100%.
Of the word, no, because the word consider. That is not a definitive. You are considering it, meaning it has to be part of the equation when you are making the determination. It doesn't mean if one person is doing X, another is doing Y, Y always wins. That's not what that says.
That's exactly what that says.
Not at all. That's not what consider says.
Part
That's
of the calculations, and part of the calculations as to who gets it.
But you and Representative Caldwell. Hang on a sec, Jeff. You and Representative Caldwell are advocating as if this is a foregone conclusion. It says twice in that section, consider. That's where I'm just saying I feel like you guys are drawing a conclusion that isn't borne out by the words that are being used there. It says consider. How am I wrong, Representative Caldwell? How am I wrong on this?
Yes, sir. Yes. So, and I apologize. So I'm driving to the Capitol, so I don't have the bill.
No, that's fair. I understand. Not a problem.
There's the ledge deck, which is summarizing it. But if you get into the bill language in that section, if I'm not mistaken, there's a term that's used, and I think it's a synonym with superior. I'm drawing a blank on what the actual term was, but it's saying like it takes not precedence, but it's something along that line, basically saying it's a priority.
Oh, so you're talking about the idea. You're talking about the idea of possibly putting a thumb on the scale. The idea that if one parent is for the gender-affirming care and the other parent isn't, then the court is directed to lean towards the gender-affirming care. Okay, that would be a fair critique. It's just not. It's not contained in the language that I see here. If that language is contained in the bill, that is an absolutely 110% fair critique. That is a fair critique.
Yeah, and I will. So when I get to the Capitol, I'll pull it up and I'll send you the exact phrase. And I wish I would have jotted it down.
Oh, don't worry about it. No, you didn't know I was going to be this weird this morning. No, this is on me, man. You didn't know I was going to be this weird. That's fine. And you're on the car. That's fine. But I trust your larger reading of it. And if that is true, if that's what you took away from it, then I would trust that. I have no reason to discount you or believe that's not true on that one. And that would be incorrect. Yeah, I don't agree with that. Yeah.
It does put the thumbs on the scale. It basically says the priority or the strongest terms goes towards the person who is affirming the gender care. But you know what? This debate here highlights the problem with the situation we're in, which is it's introduced on a Friday evening. Nobody knows about it until yesterday, and now we're trying to parse out all these small details. And we're literally going to be voting on it today in committee, and that just highlights the bigger problem that we're facing with these last-minute bills.
You know, Representative Jarvis Caldwell, I agree with you 110% on that, because when they constrain the amount of information that you have a time to get to, and they constrain the amount of debate, it tells me that they're afraid of a larger conversation, a larger debate, and they don't feel like they can defend what they're proposing. I think you've got a relatively fair critique on that one. Yes, this thing is rushed, and I disagree with it based on that. Absolutely.
Representative Caldwell, do you know, is the ACLU supporting this bill?
Yes, I believe they're so because this bill just got dropped, people haven't had time to go through it and take positions on it, but I looked at it last night, and I please correct me if I'm wrong and definitely verify it, but the ACLU is already registered in support, which tells me that they had a big part in this, because basically they were the first ones that signed up for it, so they knew it was coming.
I just want to point this out about the ACLU, because I found this in my research. Back in 1999, the ACLU led a challenge to make sure that any ban on profanity in Colorado businesses was removed. Okay? They didn't want any ban on profanity in businesses. They felt like that was a violation of free speech. Okay? So at the same time, the ACLU is now leading an effort down at the state capitol to drag businesses and business owners before the Colorado Civil Rights Commission if you misgender somebody. Please make it make sense for me.
You know, I wish I could make it make sense. I understand the roots of the ACLU and why they exist and the importance they've had over the decades. I don't feel the same way about them now, because basically every tough on crime bill that we have that comes through the legislature, these show up and are against. And I don't know. I'm not a fan of them recently from what I've seen.
Well, they're not definitely not considering being consistent with their commitment to free speech. If they're going to go to the mat to protect the business's right to use swear words, but if you business owner, misgender somebody, straight to the Civil Rights Commission with you. Representative Jarvis Caldwell will continue to track this. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. You can follow him on X at Rep Caldwell for all the latest on this bill, House Bill 251312, before the Judiciary Committee today. Hopefully we can get you back, give us some insight on what the testimony was like.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you guys.
Thank you
thanks.
so
Have a
much,
good day. Safe
Representative
driving.
Jarvis Caldwell. All right, we'll continue. Phone lines are open. What do you think of this, Bill? 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Believe nothing you've read or hear today, except for that last segment. That's actually really true. Talking with Representative Jarvis Caldwell, state representative on a new bill being introduced down at the state capitol. But a lot of other things today may be foolish because it's April Fool's Day. National correspondent Rory O'Neill joins us to take a look at the history of April Fools and some of the best pranks ever pulled. Good morning, Rory. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, well, we don't know what to believe today, and that's my favorite meme is saying whatever you see on the internet, don't believe it, and that goes for everything every day on the internet. So, we think that April Fool's Day dates back to the 1500s, specifically in France, when France switched from the Julian calendar to the Georgian calendar. Essentially, they used to have New Year's in April after the spring equinox. But now once they switched to the calendar that has January 1st at the start of the year, people who were celebrating the new year in April were the April Fools. And we think that's where this all started.
Wow, I had no idea. Good history review there, Rory.
The more you know. The little star went over.
Now, are you a foolish type of guy? Is this something you like to pull on the family?
I'm not that clever. I like them to be clever.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't want a whoopee cushion or something stupid. I it's actually clever. And my favorite April Fools that I always watch every year, I did it again this morning. In 1957, the BBC did a full, very serious report on the fact that they were having a bumper crop of spaghetti on the Swiss-Italian border. And there's videos showing women with, handkerchiefs and scarves and checkerboard, dresses on, pulling noodles out of the trees into wicker baskets and laying them out to dry. And the serious announcer with the accordion music playing, explaining how this was such a good year for the crop and the harvest was better after they feared a late March cold snap would change the taste of this year's crop. But in detail about the spaghetti harvest in Switzerland is the best.
That is awesome. And in fact, we had your colleague on earlier, and John Decker, and in light of Trump maybe proposing the idea of running for a third term, in 1992, National Public Radio aired a segment claiming that President Richard Nixon, who had resigned in disgrace in 1974, was running for office again with the slogan, "I didn't do anything wrong and I won't do it again."
There was 1985 Sports Illustrated. George Plimpton did a whole article about a pitcher named Sid Finch. You might remember that one. 1985, Sid Finch was the pitcher who could throw a fastball over 168 miles per hour. Took another week for the next episode of Sports Illustrated to come out for people to realize, oh, hey, wait a minute now. 160 so fast.
That is a fun one. Any ones that you've seen today so far? Do you expect President Trump to come out with one? Does he seem like a joking type of guy?
Well, it's funny that he did not want to make his tariff announcement today because it's April Fool's Day. It's why he's waiting until tomorrow, just to put that in perspective. But look, we've seen Taco Bell did the one where they said they bought the Liberty Bell, so it would be called the Taco Liberty Bell. Burger King did the left-handed Whopper in 1998. That was an ad they took out. A lot of this has turned into PR stunts. There was IHOP. Remember in 2018?
Yes.
IHOP changed its name to IHOB to go from International House of Pancakes to House of Burgers to say that they've got an expanded menu.
And do you remember what Wendy did to respond to that?
That was a good one. If you can't make pancakes.
Right. Imagine trying to make the leap to burgers if you can't get pancakes right.
Now, Rory O'Neill, NBC News national correspondent, do you think that the April Fool's jokes have kind of run their course for the average Joe, and now it's just a marketing tool? And I was kind of running through some that, there was a thing where they were marketing at one point. I think Yahoo was talking about people going outside to touch grass, and they were marketing a keyboard that actually had grass on it. Nerds did one where they were going to do Nerds-covered fried chicken, that type of an idea. Do we think that maybe April Fool's has become a more clever marketing campaign rather than just the average jokes that you, Jeff, and I grew up with?
And well, as we're talking, so I'm in Orlando, Florida, and as I'm talking on X, I follow the Universal Orlando theme park feed on X, right? Because they employ about 40,000 people in town, so you sort of want to. So they just announced Universal opening first ever theme park on the surface of the moon.
Well, it brings a little bit of levity,
good.
which we love. Well, Rory O'Neill, NBC News national correspondent, thanks for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill show this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, and speaking of April Fools, we had a lot of people call and text about the Pete Boyles Spanish takeover. Bill, remind people what this is. We got the audio pulled
so this
up.
is years ago. Would have been about 9 years ago is what it's looking at. 9 years ago, Peter Boyles pulled off a great April Fool's Day prank where he pretended that the station was going Spanish. Now, it's a long setup, and I wish we could get all of it in, but Tom Mueller comes in and tries to read part of the news in Spanish. But what we're going to do here is join Pete and a couple of guys that worked on our Spanish language station at the time, and this is going to be the transition into where Pete is going to have to give up the microphone because KNUS is now Spanish. Here we go.
One thing I can do is they can't stop the hotline, and I know this call signal. I know the caller ID is Mark Crowley. Mark, where the hell are you?
Well, I'm out in the parking lot. I tried to get in, and my car's not working. Bob, the security guard down here, says I'm not allowed in the building until 9 o'clock.
Mark,
I don't know what's there's all these pickup trucks outside here. They got California tags. There's a bunch of kids in the parking lot. I can't get in. What is going on down there? I tried to call Casey. I can't find him anywhere.
Well, Beth called. I mean,
What?
Wait a minute. Let me reset this. Casey apparently got let go at midnight last night. And
No. What?
Casey's gone. But you know, they're in Winter Park. We arranged his spring break. He's a hard-working kid. And Beth called, Casey's wife. Casey, they can't find Casey.
Man, that's a great way to ruin a vacation.
And you can't get in the building?
No, I can't get in. I can't update the computer. I was listening to the news a minute ago. What was that newscast about?
Tommy went to California. Remember, I thought he was in Santa Barbara. He went to Texas.
Texas?
I'm telling you, Mark, you can't get in the building.
No, I can't get in.
Well, there's guys
they said
here.
I can come in at 9 o'clock to see the boss.
There's guys here. There's a couple of, I don't know who these guys are, and then this guy Paco, and then another guy Frank Lopez, and then this Bob Roberts is a
Who's this Bob Roberts guy? I just heard that when I was
Did you hear
on
that?
hold.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I was told all this stuff.
Well, I was lucky to get in because they can't screen this line, so I was.
No,
able
they
to
can't.
get through.
I know your ID when you call.
Wow.
All right, let me ask these guys. Stay with me. All right, who are you?
Well, first of all, good morning. What up, D-Town baby boys?
Yeah, what up? What's going on, people?
This is it.
Buenos dias, Denver.
Buenos dias. Desde Mexico, Tijuana. I am Jesus Chuy Rodriguez, a.k.a. the Chupacabras, and on my left, I got the one and only...
I'm Baca, and I like tacos. I'm Baca, and I like tacos. Tacos.
This is talk radio, you two?
This is, yes, it is.
We need a little change, man.
This is, yeah.
Who's this? Is it? Did you?
This homeboy, this is Paco right here. That was a homie.
Mark, do you know anything at all about that?
No. I just come in like I normally do, swipe my card on the door,
and it wouldn't let you
Bob,
in.
the security guard,
The guy
says, I'm
downstairs.
sorry, sir, you can't come in.
The guy said to me, he said, "Don't try your card." Now, the guy, and then there's in this building, we have a security building, and the guy says to me, "Don't try your card, Mr. Boyles." And I'm okay. I thought the guy's opening the door.
Mr. Boyles, it's always been, hey Pete, what's going on?
Now, how you doing? And he looked weird, and I come in here, and Casey's not here. I don't know where the boy is, and he got fired apparently last night. They let him go at midnight, and he's finally got a vacation.
Yeah, they give him a couple days off, and this is what he gets.
They bombed him, and I don't know where Kelly Michaels is. I haven't heard from Brian Taylor. I haven't heard from John Baggett. Have you heard from any of these guys?
No. I saw him yesterday at that meeting, but that was and nobody let on anything.
How about Tommy going to California and coming back like that?
Yeah, I thought he was in Santa Barbara all this time.
And now we got these guys.
New generation, man.
Now, fellas, I'm going to ask you a question. I mean, I'm told. Well, here's my email. Due to ratings and revenue, Mark, look at this. It said, I thought we were really doing well financially.
Yeah.
No, man. I think it's a new time. It's time. We're taking back. First of all, I want to say I want to thank Salem, but what's up with your parking lot? My cousin couldn't park.
What's up with your parking lot?
All right, that was a throwback to 9 years ago when Pete Boyles had an April Fool's Day joke that the station had been taken over by the Hispanic channel.
Yeah, and they used the Spanish broadcasters are down the hall from us on the Spanish station that's Christian Teach and Talk, and they brought them in because they're all bilingual and set it up as if the station was being taken over, and they actually take over part of the morning show later on that goes completely Spanish. But the setup's fantastic, and of course we had to give a shout out to Mark Crowley there, who's still with us, and he was playing along.
Sounds the same too.
Yeah, and even Tom Moeller, who does news on KRKS, he's still here with us, but doesn't do it here on KNUS, came in and tried to read the news in Spanish, which was fan-freaking-tastic. It was really well done.
I'll
Pete
post
knocked
a
that out of
link
the park.
to that from the YouTube channel if you want to listen to all of it.
It's so good.
Kind of prophetic with the Spanish takeover.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely it is. Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh, boy. All right. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. I have it posted up at X, 710KNUS, Peter Boyle's April Fool's Day from April 1st of 2015. It's actually a video, which makes it even better. So go watch that legendary takeover of 710KNUS by the Spanish formatting show down the hallway.
Yeah, it's fun to see how they pulled it off. Now, you only get one shot of the studio pretty much the entire time.
Yeah.
But it's fun to see the machinations, how they bring people in, and you see the Spanish guys sitting there most of the time and how it's kind of set up. The part with Tommy Moeller is fantastic. So, yeah, it's worth it. It's worth a view. If you enjoyed that little snippet, go watch the whole thing. I think it's, about an hour or so in that. That's really good.
Well, what's not a joke, taking care of a wound.
No, not at all. I want to talk to you about our advertiser just joined us a couple of weeks ago, Wound Care Associates of Colorado, and already making a change in my life. Now, what I want to tell you is that... Oh, that's sorry. The music was still there. What I want to talk to you about is, you've got a slow healing cut, a diabetic ulcer, a pressure sore, someone your family, your social group. Oftentimes this happens with someone that has long-term care. Recently found out my mom took a spill and had a little bit of a wound. It wasn't something that Wound Care Associates needed to take care of, but we were concerned about it because as you get older, it takes longer for your skin and tissue to knit back together. And that's a big deal because that little tiny cut can turn into a huge problem. Happened in my life with my aunt. She had a wound that just was having problems healing. She was seeing a wound treatment facility. It was on her leg, and she got exposed to MRSA because the wound care treatment facility was maintaining the wound. In my opinion, that was kind of the first mistake because it left open that highway and access for the dirt, germs, and bacteria, the MRSA, to get into her body. And because of that, she spent numerous days, weeks, months inside the hospital, in and out, and also had some amputations because of the infection and everything else. I don't want you or your family members to go through that. Currently, one of my kids had a small medical procedure, but the incision wasn't really healing that well. We'd seen the surgeon a couple of times, and they were like, well, we'll just maintain this and make sure it doesn't. No, we're not. We're going to close that up so the dirt, germs, and bacteria don't get inside. That's why the very first thing that I did after that second appointment was contact Wound Care Associates of Colorado. My daughter is being treated by them right now, and you can get you or your family member treated by reaching out to them at coloradowound.com, coloradowound.com. This is why you want to reach out to Wound Care Associates of Colorado, because they do it differently than anybody else in the game in Colorado. First of all, they maximize your healing outcome. That's a priority for them, making sure that your tissue and skin actually starts healing and knitting back together so that the MRSA, the dirt, germs, and bacteria we talked about earlier, don't get access to your body. That is of utmost importance, and that is a priority for the Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Plus, they're going to make it easy for you. They go old school. It's concierge service without the concierge price. They are doing house calls. Their wound-certified nurse practitioner comes to your location, you or your loved one, and sets up a custom treatment plan there. All the treatment is done at your place. That's it. No worries about transportation, no figuring out how you got to go see mom or dad and pick them up and take them to, take time off and then get them to the clinic and then get them back home. You don't have to worry about an Uber or anything else or a shuttle. No. Wound Care Associates of Colorado comes to their location. If you've got a family member or a friend that is in a retirement community, this is perfect. Do not mess around. Go with the best. Make sure that they will fix the problem. Don't go with that other place. It's just going to maintain the problem, okay? Wound Care Associates of Colorado, Wound Care Associates of Colorado. Reach out to them at coloradowound.com, coloradowound.com, and when you do, tell them you heard about them here on the Jeff and Bill Show. We'll be right back right after this. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show on Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
It is 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. A very happy April Fool's Day to you. We're talking some jokes, but we're also talking some very serious things this morning on the program. One thing that is no joke, Senate Bill 3, the restriction and tremendous restrictions and oversight that you're going to have to now go through in order to purchase a semi-automatic gun in the state of Colorado, heading out of the House and the Senate over to the governor's office for his signature. Is he going to sign it? We're going to talk with Ian Escalante, the executive director of the Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, here in a second, as well as Representative Ron Weinberg, state rep, on what it's going to do to gun owners and gun shop owners in the state of Colorado. This is no joke. Very serious restrictions on our Second Amendment rights coming from the Democrats in the state of Colorado. We're going to talk with these gentlemen. You're not going to want to miss the conversation. Now is time to talk with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
40 and cloudy in Denver, expecting a high of 56 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, the commies on Capitol Hill springing a new bill in Colorado. 25-13-12 on conservatives last night. No April Fool's Day joke here. It's for real. A bill protecting transgenders again, and Colorado State Rep Jarvis Caldwell on the show last hour with Jeff and Bill. It was sprung on him last night, and this is only a small part of it.
The first part of the bill brings in the custody thing. So, you have a spouse, you have custody over your child, your spouse is maybe pushing this gender ideology stuff on the child, and you say, listen, we're going to get you treatment. I think you're confused. You're 5 years old. That is enough to lose custody over your child under this bill. There's no age limits or age ranges on this, so it could be a confused 5-year-old child that you have custody of, and then you lose custody over this child because you're trying to get them treatment.
And that's what they do best. They create confusion, chaos, just mess up the society.
Think about this, Blake. We were talking about it. Like, you could lay into a customer with the worst expletives around, and no problem. You misgender them, straight to the Colorado Civil Rights Convention.
Oh, wow.
Think
so
about
that's
that.
part of it. I missed that part.
Yeah,
so
you misgender. If a business misgenders somebody, so you're a waiter and you say ma'am or sir, and you get it wrong, they can drag you before the Colorado Civil Rights Commission the same way they did Jack Phillips.
Oh, my Lord.
So, to that point, you could literally lay into somebody with expletives. Yeah, you lose the customer, but you misgender the customer, and you get dragged before the government for violation of law.
I do it all the time. I always say yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And now, you have some young people, and I've said it, man. I've said, hey, yes, sir. Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you. I'm not a sir. That's happened to me a couple of times. Wow. Throw the handcuffs on me. I get it. Now, this young man, he gets it. He's an elected official. I don't know where it is, but he's a Democrat, and I love this guy.
But, Mr. Speaker, again, the consent of one person cannot stand for the consent of another. Just because one person is comfortable with a transgender woman being in the bathroom with them or playing sports with them or being in a prison with them doesn't mean that another woman is. And these issues do not have to cause violence. And putting in place policies that say that women who were born women deserve a space to themselves, whether that be the bathroom or sports or the locker room or prisons, is not transphobic.
Wow, there is hope. I've got to find out his name. Just common sense. Wow. DJT is waiting on some big action, saying his administration expects about $5 trillion in U.S. investments after his tariffs take effect. On Wednesday, new reciprocal tariffs are set to take effect against Canada, Mexico, China, and the European Union. Trump is also waiting for the Supreme Court to rule as soon as this week on several emergency applications related to his executive orders. They include the deportations of alleged, I love that, alleged, of TDA, Tren de Aragua gang members who we welcomed here in Colorado under the Alien Enemies Act. Wisconsin and Florida are in the spotlight today as voters hit the polls, making their voices heard in 3 races seen as a referendum on the direction of the country. Today in Wisconsin, there's a state Supreme Court election, and Florida voters will decide 2 pivotal vacant House seats that could help shift the balance of power nationally. The seats had been held by former Representatives Mike Walz, now Trump's national security advisor, and Matt Gaetz, briefly tapped to become Attorney General. Elon has been encouraging voters to get out in Wisconsin. This is huge.
I think this election, there's a good chance it decides whether the Republicans or Democrats control the House of Representatives. Because if Brad Schimmel does not win, if the Democrats win, they're going to redraw the Wisconsin district, and Wisconsin voters will be disenfranchised of 2 Republican House votes. That's what's going to happen. This would be catastrophic, and it would destroy the agenda for reform, and really it would make it really almost impossible for the reforms that are underway to take place.
No injuries are being reported after a fire on Pearl Street in Boulder. The fire was reported just before 8:30 last night in the building at 1047 Pearl Street. The building houses several businesses, including the Salt Restaurant. Boulder Fire Rescue says the building sustained significant damage from the fire and smoke. The cause of the fire is under investigation. The T-Wolves at the Nuggets tonight in NBA action, and in the NHL, the Flames over the Avalanche 3-2. The Phillies beat the Rockies 6-1. 38 in Parker, 39 in Brighton, 40 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. It is spring. We need golf claps. Happy April Fool's Day. Don't get fooled today. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A cool and unsettled stretch of weather will continue here for Denver through this work week and probably all the way through Saturday. Temperatures will be low to mid-50s today, cloudy with a few rain and snow showers around the area today and tonight, lows lower 30s. 40s and lower 50s Wednesday, a few showers of rain and snow with low to mid-40s Thursday into Thursday night, and areas of rain and snow Friday and Saturday. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Look, if you're losing your hair, you need a simple solution that works. You want the best modern technology with top-rated physicians, something that's guaranteed to work. Guys, you need Dr. Tanya Pauls and her team at Advanced Hair. They've completely redefined hair restoration, from the experience itself to their unmatched results. Receding hairline, bald spot, or thinning hair. Address them all with Advanced Hair's simple one-day treatment in a calm, relaxed environment with the most experienced professionals. Advanced Hair has performed tens of thousands of these breakthrough treatments, and get this, your own natural hair begins to regrow the very next day. No one in Denver can offer anything like the advanced FUE found at Advanced Hair, and I highly recommend their team. It starts with your free consultation. Give them a call. Here's their phone number, 720-459-HAIR. That's 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you also get $250 off and $250 free hair grafts. So refine your hairline with the team that's redefined hair restoration. 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. That's 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. All right, one question I get everywhere I go, besides questions about the videos I shoot about Bernie Sanders and AOC rally when I was down there, that video that I made. I get this question about whether or not Jared Polis will sign Senate Bill 3. To give us some insight is the Executive Director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, Ian Escalante. Good morning, Ian. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you all for having me.
All right. Is he signing it?
Well, that's what we don't know yet. Colorado Sun reported that he indicated he's going to sign it, but we don't have any hard documentation based on how he's been about these types of bills in previous years. No real gun ban or gun ban light type of legislation has ever made it to his desk other than the ghost gun ban, which is a little bit different than this, and it was a little bit easier for him to justify signing even to a moderate base. But if he signs this, he will no longer, not that he really is able to call himself a libertarian as is, but if he signs it now, he will really, really make a fool out of anyone who ever actually believed this guy had any sort of limited government or pro-liberty views at all.
We're talking with Ian Escalante, Executive Director of RMGO. Remind people what Senate Bill 3 does. There was a lot of amendments added as it got through the House and Senate, went through reconciliation, came out. What does the bill, as of now, do to the Second Amendment rights of Coloradans?
Absolutely. So this bill started out, Jeff, as a 9-page bill when it was filed on January 5th, the first day of session. It initially was a bill that would outright ban the sale and manufacture and purchase of semi-automatic firearms with detachable magazines. They knew they couldn't get that passed out of the Senate, so around midnight on February 14th, they rewrote the bill completely from an outright gun ban to this crazy permit to purchase scheme, which is what Senate Bill 3 has morphed into. So now what you would have to do is you would have to obtain what's called a firearm safety eligibility card. So submit your biometric data to your sheriff. They would have to positively ID you, run a background check. You would have to pay an undisclosed amount of money to the sheriff for a processing fee, and then to Colorado Parks and Wildlife for your firearm safety eligibility card fee. After that, you would have to take a 2-day course, and that's assuming the sheriff doesn't deny you your card, because there's a big loophole in there that allows sheriffs to deny firearm safety eligibility cards to anyone who they deem to be a threat to themselves or others. After you get the card, you have to take a 2-day course. You have to pass a test by 90%. Then you have to pay for another permit. So then you can go pass a background check, wait 72 hours, and then pick up your gun.
Holy cow. And then this would be for what types of guns?
So this would be for nearly all semi-auto rifles with detachable magazines. There's a list of firearms that were cut out of the bill. I was told that the reason why this arbitrary list of firearms were cut out of the bill was to get Senator Dylan Roberts from the Western Slope on board. My guess is that he took his whole gun collection and put it into amendment. That way, he wouldn't have to go through this process when he buys new firearms. But there are some firearms cut out, like the Springfield M1A, a couple hunting rifles, some types of shotguns. But almost any semi-auto firearm that takes a detachable magazine, that has any sort of gas operation whatsoever. So we're talking about the PSA Jackal, all AR platform rifles and pistols, all AK platform rifles and pistols. And it even goes into certain types of handguns. So the Steyr GB, the Walther, the James Bond gun, all of those aliens, all of those firearms would now be covered under this. And now the Department of Revenue is given this arbitrary power to be able to add firearms to the list that is covered under this permit anytime for any reason that they want.
Ian Escalante, Executive Director of RMGO, filling us in on Senate Bill 3. Now, will there be a grandfather clause? If you already own an AR-15, is that going to be grandfathered in, or are you going to have to go through this process if you've previously purchased a gun?
So right now, the firearms you currently own are cut out of this bill, and I want to emphasize for right now, because there's another bill. Jeff, there are more gun control bills that were filed this year than there were in the year of 2000, the year after Columbine. So even whether Senate Bill 3 passed or not, there are all these other, I would say, companion bills that are going along with it. One of them currently is a mandate for sheriffs to set up a serial number registry. And right now they're doing it under the guise of running traces for stolen firearms. You and I both know that this is just a foot in the door, and they're going to set up the system. But what they're going to realize quite soon is there's really no way of enforcing this permit to purchase system, because there are people that are going to purchase their firearms out of state. There are going to be people that definitely are going to be able to easily circumvent this law, and they're not going to be able to tell those who don't have this permit who bought the permit went into place or bought the firearm after the permit went into place. And what's going to end up happening is in about 2 years, Tom Sullivan and Andrew Basenecker and all these crazy anti-gun loons are going to come back and they're going to say, well, we worked so hard on this meaningful permit to purchase system, but we have no way of enforcing it. So what's going to come next? Well, they're going to expand this permit to purchase to all firearms like they are currently doing right now in Washington and like they have done in Illinois. And then it's going to be permit to possess. Because in the state of Illinois right now, your firearm owner ID card, which is what they call your permit out there, if it expires and you don't renew it, you're required by law to surrender all the firearms you own. Otherwise, you're a felon. This is what we're heading towards. If anyone thinks that they're going to stop after this and they're just going to, okay, well, we did what we wanted to, we're done now, you're delusional. They're not going to stop. This never stops. This doesn't stop until we throw these people out of office next year and make it to where they physically do not have the numbers to pass more extreme gun control like this, or until we're totally disarmed and we're all either run out of the state or we're in jail.
We're talking with Ian Escalante, the Executive Director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, about what Senate Bill 3 is going to do to this state, whether or not Jared Polis is going to sign it. Now, as you mentioned, in many ways, the people that have to enforce this are the sheriffs. Did they come down and testify? What are their thoughts on Senate Bill 3?
So the sheriffs are almost unilaterally in strong opposition to Senate Bill 3. Sheriffs from Sheriff Mike Sell from Teller County, he has been very vocal about this. Sheriff Reams from Weld County. And the crazy part is Sheriff Lucero, the Democrat sheriff of Pueblo, has also been very vocal in opposition to this bill. So we're seeing individuals and sheriffs and elected officials from both sides of the aisle coming out and saying this is a terrible idea, we shouldn't do this.
Well, I can imagine what they're thinking, and probably what they testified towards was, all right, we already have limited resources, and what we're going to spend our time doing, instead of going out onto the streets and getting the bad guys, we're going to spend our time making sure that anyone that buys an AR-15 has gotten this permit to purchase, has now completed a 2-day course, has paid these indeterminate fees, done the background checks on these people. I mean, it's going to be a tremendous amount of work on these sheriffs, and it's primarily, I imagine they'll get a few bad guys in it and make sure that they don't get guns, but a lot of these, vast majority, are just going to be law-abiding citizens and now jumping through all these hoops.
Now, it's fought very hard in the House and the Senate. We did the best we could. We spent, our donors gave us a lot of money that we were able to spend. My estimation is that we've spent over $250,000 trying to kill Senate Bill 3 so far. Now all eyes are on the governor. So what we're going to be doing is we currently have a Jared Polis veto campaign that we're pushing out on all platforms right now. And in addition to that, we're sweetening up the deal a little bit to where if you go to rmgo.org/AWB, that's rmgo.org/AWB, you have the opportunity to, if you haven't signed your petition yet, sign your petition. But in addition, we have embedded a mail to link, so you can just click on the text on the landing page, and it'll generate an email that all you have to do is click send, and it'll go right to Governor Polis's inbox. And to sweeten the deal for people who are participating, we're giving them the opportunity to win a free PSA Jackal, and that is one of the firearms that's going to be banned under this legislation, or you would have to buy back your right to buy this firearm should this legislation go into effect. So we're sweetening up the deal for gun owners. We want to give them an opportunity to win a firearm that the government right now is trying to regulate out of existence. So if you haven't done that already, do that. In addition, if you have not called Jared Polis yet, you need to call him and you need to urge him to veto Senate Bill 3. We need to be calling him every single day. We need a swath and an overwhelming group of people shutting down his phone lines every single day. This guy wants to run for president. He wants to play Mr. Bipartisan. So let's make sure he knows that the vast majority of Coloradans, from Republicans to Libertarians to unaffiliated voters to Democrats, do not want to live under this horrific piece of legislation.
We're talking with Ian Escalante. He's the executive director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners about Senate Bill 3. To that point, Ian, I put up a poll yesterday. Can Jared Polis sign Senate Bill 3, a bill that puts tremendous requirements on owning a semi-automatic gun and still be president? 95.8% of over 1,000 votes. Over 1,000 votes. 95.8% said no, he cannot become president if he signs this bill. Here's the phone number for Jared Polis, 303-866-2885. That's 303-866-2885. Light up his phones. Tell him no on this. The only thing that this is going to restrict, really, it might get a small percentage of criminals that are like, gosh, I guess I'll go through the process of owning a semi-automatic gun. Is this is going to restrict law-abiding citizens, make it harder for them. And Ian, we don't know how much this is going to cost. One of the critiques is that this is the only people that are going to own guns after this are rich people.
It's true. It's becoming this is really an act of classism here, where they want only the individuals that they deem worthy of purchasing a firearm to purchase and own a firearm. And I mean, this is no different. You replace this with voting, or you replace this, you have to go through you have to get a 2-tiered permit system, and then you have to pay all kinds of fees. Imagine this was voting, Jeff, instead of purchasing a firearm. I mean, if it was voting, we'd be back in the Jim Crow era. But now it's firearms, so it's okay. It's absolutely not okay. You replace permit to exercise your right and replace firearms with any other of the rights enshrined by the Bill of Rights in our Constitution, and you tell me if that sounds right or not.
Ian Escalante, Executive Director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners with Jeff and Bill. How do you square the circle with that, Ian, with Donald Trump's recent executive order outlining that we need to have a voter ID program, that a government-issued ID should be necessary for voting? Wouldn't that be an ID to exercise your right to vote?
So when it comes to voter ID, that's a situation. I mean, it's not a position that we take as Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. At the same time, when you are dealing with an ID card versus going through a onerous the onerous process to purchase a firearm.
2-day
course.
course.
Very much says, 2-day course, things of that nature. I haven't read the SAVE Act or what that would entail, but my understanding is that you just have to show your driver's license so they can verify your ID when you go vote. I don't know if that's totally accurate or not, but that's my understanding of it. There's a very big difference between saying you are making a decision that's going to affect the rights and liberties of your fellow neighbors by going to cast your vote. So we want to make sure you're not voting 5 or 6 times versus you have to jump through these hoops. You have to pay an undisclosed fee akin to a poll tax so that you can go ahead and exercise the right that defends all others. Like, we know that without the Second Amendment, our right to vote, our right to speak freely, our right to practice our religion is done. It's over.
But Ian, it costs us money
exist.
if you're getting a government ID, if it's a passport, a real ID, or anything else. There's still a charge. There's still a charge associated with that. The only thing I'm doing is I'm pushing back on this idea that in order to exercise our right to vote, we don't have some of these rules and constraints per se on them. And I'm just saying that Trump is advocating for exactly some of the controls and restrictions that you are saying we shouldn't have on Second Amendment rights, and because we don't have them on voting. And that's the only thing I'm pointing out, is it seems like that Trump is trying to push us towards a system that will be much closer to what Senate Bill 3 has for guns. I'm not saying it's exact, but I'm saying licensing, there may be testing involved as to whether or not you can exercise your right to vote. That seems to me to be similar.
It would be similar in the sense of, when you're dealing with something like this. I haven't read the SAVE Act. I haven't read any of the statements that he's put out. So I really couldn't tell you what the similarities are. But once again, it's unsurprising to see that the federal government is coming after people's, individual rights, in the sense of, let's replace it. Let's take voting out of the question. And let's replace it with speech. What if you had to, in order to go out and speak freely and exercise your right to post on social media or something like that, you had to take a test from the government, from the FCC. You had to take a test. You had to prove that you weren't going to speak hate speech on social media, and then you get the privilege of opening up a social media account. This is totally insane.
And we're not even in the same universe either. What you have to do to purchase a gun, already with the background check and the forms you got to fill out and all that stuff, we're not even in the same universe as just getting a basic voter ID, which just wants to make sure you're an actual citizen of this country to make sure before you actually go out there to vote. Now, Ian Escalante, I want to ask you this. If the governor does not sign it and just lets it sit there, it can become law without him having to sign it. Is that a way he could get out of this?
Yes. So once it gets transmitted to his desk, he has 10 days to take action on it. And if he doesn't take action, it becomes law by default. So what we have to do is we have to make sure he takes action and vetoes this. That is so incredibly important. That's why we have to put the pressure on.
Ian Escalante, Executive Director of RMGO. If this thing becomes law, I'm sure you guys are gaming this out. You don't want to get there, but you may have to. Lawsuits. We then challenge it on Second Amendment violation issues, and it sounds like there's other states doing this as well. Could this end up before the Supreme Court?
Well, right now we're sitting down with our legal team. Initially, we had planned on doing a legal strategy before the bill got out of both chambers, but the issue was it was getting amended so much that we sat down and we said, we don't really know if the bill we're looking at right now is going to be the final bill that makes it to his desk. So now that it's on its way to his desk, we're sitting down, we're considering our options. Can't say what we're going to be doing yet, but we will be looking over this in a very detailed fashion. The other thing we're running into is now that they pushed out the enactment date a year, we may have to wait until August 1st of 26 to even file this lawsuit. So we're going to be looking over it. We're going to be seeing what's happening. And in addition to that, right now, though, we are very focused on pressuring Jared Polis to veto this bill. And the next thing we really got to do is we got to make some serious changes here in the makeup of our legislature. If we don't change what's going on here, if we don't change and punish the people, punish electorally, to be clear, electorally punish the people who have no problem with steamrolling our rights, we're going to be done. There's nothing left that can be done here to fix any of the issues that they keep ramming through on us, whether it's the issues with election security, whether it's the issues with, I heard Speaker McCluskey say that it's better if you just abort your child because it'll cost the state less money. You have them, Tom Sullivan, saying that this is not the end. We're going to come back and we're going to keep coming back. He more or less said on the Senate floor the other day, we're not really sure if any of these gun laws are going to work. So if they don't work, we're going to keep coming back and we're just going to keep passing more laws until we find one.
Ian Escalante, Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, go join RMGO right now. I'm a member, rmgo.org, rmgo.org. Empower these guys. They're going to need it. We need to push. We need your voice. Call Governor Polis, but you can all get involved at rmgo.org. And thank God that there's guys out there still fighting for our Second Amendment rights. All right, we'll continue. Ian, thanks so much.
Yes,
You're
thank
listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. So we just wrapped up our conversation with Ian Escalante, Executive Director of RMGO, as to whether or not the governor will sign Senate Bill 3. Bottom line, we just don't know. This is the bill that's going to make you jump through a lot of restrictions in order to purchase a semi-automatic weapon. Well, I saw this video because if you want to talk about what these bills are actually going to do, are they going to address crime? Are they going to make life harder on criminals? Or are they going to go after law-abiding citizens? Representative Ron Weinberg posted this video yesterday. We're going to talk with him in a second. Listen to this. This is Foundation Firearms out of Loveland.
Hey guys, Mike here from Foundation Firearms. Hey, it's that last day. It's hard to say that. It's really weird to say that because I miss seeing everyone already. It's going to be really different this next couple of days for me. But I just wanted to share a little bit more, like, the story and stuff. The last year and a half I've been going through a lot. We had the building on the market. It's under contract, which is part of the reason why we're actually closing the business. And then the laws are the other part. During that year and a half, though, God gave me some good words. He told me he prepared me for this moment. He prepared me even back when I first started the business. I feel like there's somebody out there that needs to hear this verse. It stuck with me this week. It's from Joshua, and it's, be strong and courageous. Do not tremble, do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God, he is with you wherever you go, which means he's been preparing a way for me the entire time. And I think part of that has to do with this verse. I don't know how much of you guys notice stuff when you're in my shop. I have this little plaque right next to my front door. It's where I got my name from. Again, it's another verse, and it's lay no other foundation other than that, which is Jesus Christ. And that's what I believe, man. Like, you have to have Christ first in everything. And so I'm sorry if that offends some of you guys, but most of you guys are going to understand that's where I come from. And I just hope that it reaches your heart. And you guys, I will miss every single one of you. You have some incredible customers, some incredible friends. And I just want to say thanks. So with that, I'm signing off. Thanks.
That's the owner of a firearm company store up in Loveland, Colorado. And the person that posted that was Representative Ron Weinberg. He joins the Jeff and Bill show now. Representative, that's a constituent of yours. He's closing down his shop in part because of all these new laws coming from the state capitol. Is that right?
Yes. Good morning, guys. It's absolutely heartbreaking even to hear that again. All of the laws that are coming through are actually showing impact now, and people are going out of business.
And you swung by and spent some time with that guy's name is Mike. What did Mike say about all this?
You know what? Him and I have been friends for a few years now. He's actually just his shop's down the road from my house, so I used to go there all the time. He used to donate to Unify NOCO, the Suitcase Party. He used to do auctions like for guns and stuff like that. Very generous gentleman, and him and I have dialogued about this most of the time. And I caught him yesterday, and yeah, the laws are putting him out of business. He's going to Texas. He's going to pick up and go. He's been here 14 years, and everything we're doing under this gold dome has just destroyed his livelihood in the state that he would have preferred to be in.
What is it about the laws that are making it hard for gun shop owners? And I imagine you've heard from other constituents. You've had sheriffs down there testifying. This is a bill that's going to have real consequences. What would you say to somebody that's just said, hey, this is just a procedural process that people have to go through. It shouldn't be affecting gun shop owners. Why is it that these laws are actually affecting them?
The first thing I tell that person is to wake up. It's not a procedural process. It's the first hula hoop that you have to jump through to get just an ID card to even be eligible for a firearm. It's a gun registry. It's big government. It's making it as hard as possible for a gun shop to be able to sell. I mean, the reality is that the gun shops are not selling guns. They're not making any money. So if you're making the process a 30-day to 60-day period between trainings, between getting approved by a sheriff, between all these other ID cards, and the gun shops are not selling anything, which means they're losing revenue.
Now, in light of this, Rep. Ron Weinberg, do you think criminals are going to not carry guns because it's harder to purchase them from a gun shop?
Mike said this yesterday exactly about this, is that we are creating a black market. We are going to create a black market for firearms in the state of Colorado. That's all these laws are going to do, because criminals don't give a dang about it. And they will get their guns. They don't care about going to their sheriff and getting an ID. They don't care about going to train. We are the ones who get punished, nobody else.
And I imagine we're talking with Representative Ron Weinberg. I imagine a gun shop owner like Mike and others looking for a place where they can maximize their revenue because there's not so many restrictions, you don't have so much government intervention, are going to be heading to states where that's easier to do, places like Texas and others. Are you seeing that with other gun shop owners? Are you hearing that from the industry, that they're going to start packing up and moving out?
Yes, and that's the plan. So they started this plan roughly 7 to 10 years ago when they kept trying to put the ballot measures and having people vote on going against guns. And guess what? It backfired and it didn't work. The people, Democrats and Republicans, voted to keep their firearms. Well, the next plan in the mix was, how do we get rid of guns now? We take the gun shops and the gun shows. And if people cannot get a gun, they win. And that's the plot here.
And are you aware of any state that's done a lot of gun restrictions where the state has now gotten safer?
No, not at all. That's ridiculous. That's the statement itself is ridiculous. A well-armed populace is what prevents crime.
Now, Representative Ron Weinberg, what did you hear from constituents when the House was debating Senate Bill 3? Give us a sense of maybe the percentage breakdown. Was it 80% against Senate Bill 3, 20% in support of it? You got a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls. What did you hear from voters in Colorado about this bill?
99% against 003. Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliates. Very, very, very small, slim 1%. I would even go less than 1% of hearing that people were for 003.
Now it heads to the governor's desk. We just had Ian Escalante, executive director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, on. He doesn't really know how Governor Polis is going to do on this. You're inside the Capitol. You're working there, talking with the governor's staff. Do you think he signs it? Do you think he doesn't sign it, allows it to become law anyways, or does he veto it? Your thoughts, Representative Ron Weinberg?
It's a great question, man. I don't know. There's been no sense. I want to have that weird, strange hope that he knows that this is wrong and that he's not going to sign it, but there's no definite answer to that.
I think many of us that have been working with him, watched him for years, know that the libertarian label that some people like to put on him is completely false. He's never been a libertarian. I think we're about to see it in this particular case. What can people do in the next few days, from your perspective, to make the biggest impact in an effort to stop Senate Bill 3 from becoming law?
You flood this building. You flood the governor's office with letters and with calls. RMGO is doing a fantastic job. Follow RMGO. They've got numbers out there. The Colorado Shootings Association is doing a great job too. Get the phone numbers. Make the phone calls. Right now, it's out of the representatives and the senators' hands. So if you're trying to call the representatives and the senators, you're wasting your time. It's all on the governor's desk, and we're waiting for the governor to make a decision.
Phone number to reach the governor, 303-866-2885. That's 303-866-2885, or go to rmgo.org, and you can be a part of what Rocky Mountain Gun Owners are doing. By the way, I'm emailing now with Mike Mike's going to join the show. The owner of Foundation Farms is going to join the show tomorrow. We're going to confirm the time, but we're going to talk with people that are directly impacted by these laws. We would not have known about this if it wasn't for Representative Ron Weinberg posting this online. You can follow him on X at Rep Weinberg. That's WEINBERG. Rep Weinberg. Follow him on X. He's tracking all this. We know you got a busy day ahead of you. Thank you for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill show this morning.
Appreciate you guys greatly. Thanks for everything you do.
All right. Lot to cover on this. So get active. There's still an opportunity to try to roll this back, but this is just the result of having not just Democrats in office, progressives in office. If you go back to 2013, when some Democrats even winked at the idea of some gun control, they were all recalled. Now, 12 years later, they have dominant control. They're pushing this stuff forward, and they're not facing electoral consequences. So if you want something to change, you got to give them a call, and you got to get active down at the Colorado State Capitol. All right, I want to talk to you about my friend Dan Caplis with Dan Caplis Law. I've known Dan for well over a decade. Pro-life, pro-family, pro-faith, pro-America. That matters because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everybody involved in the case. You want a person with a sterling reputation, 40 years of service in this community and helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. But more than just being a great guy, he's a real winner. Listen to this. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Caplis Law, the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551. That's 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S Law.com. We'll get to your phone calls and text. Phone lines are open, 303-696-1971. Or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line, 720-819-5115. Lots to cover. Phone lines open. Would love to hear your voice. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking Senate Bill 3. It's on its way to the governor's desk now. This is the one that's going to make you jump through a whole bunch of hoops, spin on your head, learn how to hula hoop, all in order to purchase a gun. I mean, seriously, a 2-day course. You got to pass it at 90%. You got to get a permit. Even to take the course in, you got to get another permit. Waiting period, all that stuff just to buy a semi-automatic rifle. Let's go to Ron in Denver. Good morning, Ron. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Jeff and Bill. Thanks for taking my call. I wanted to get the phone number again of the governor.
Yep, 303
Mm-hmm.
866 2885 is the governor's constituent services helpline.
2885.
2885. I think that'll take you to his office. 303-866-2885 is constituent services for the governor.
You. I'm not stunned or surprised. I was talking to Bill about Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, and he's going to run for president. He's worth $3 billion. That pushes Polis to the side of the road. So I don't think Polis cares at all. I don't understand the evil of the mentality. The comment of Gomez last week about abortions.
That was McCluskey.
I don't understand it, but
they're happy to take this out and put abortion into the Constitution. So obviously,
I know,
that's
and
not a concern.
I think the only thing you do is you go after these people, the 24 seats
Yep.
that are
Ron, great call. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
KNUS.
It is 9 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe. We've been talking Senate Bill 3. It's passed out of the House, the Senate, and now heads to the governor's desk. Is Jared Polis going to sign it? We spoke with Ian Escalante from Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. We spoke with Ron Weinberg, state rep, on the impact this is having on gun shop owners as they're closing up their shops now. Let's go to Joel in Littleton. Good morning, Joel. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen. Use that loosely.
Probably smart.
How does this affect gun owners that I own roughly 20 weapons. And there's 2 revolvers, and the rest have magazines.
So right now, it won't affect your current gun ownership. And I think what you're going to see is a run now to gun shops, especially if Jared Polis signs this, to try to purchase, because all of your existing guns will be grandfathered in. But as Ian Escalante, Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, pointed out, that's just until the next legislative session, when they require current gun owners to go through this entire rigmarole of a 2-day course. You need to get a permit just to own a gun. Then you have to get a permit for the particular gun that you want to buy. You have to go through a waiting period, background check, all that stuff. And I've heard that there are bills being introduced, and I don't know the details of this, that would limit the total number of guns you're able to purchase. That has not passed through the House and Senate yet, but Democrats do have their eyes on that.
And can we just open up gun shops and have gun shows in Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas?
That's a good question. From what I
just,
understood,
just like pot. I mean, just like the pot.
Yeah, what I understood from Ian Escalante is that you could purchase these guns in other states and then just drive them on over.
Not report them to Denver, or to Colorado.
Or it might be a different process to notify the state that you've now brought the gun in. So it is very convoluted. It's going to require a lot of hoops to jump through. And I think that's part of the point on the Democrat side.
See, and I'm not the crazy one that's going to go out and shoot up schools and all that. Because I have the weapons. I'm not that stupid. I'm not.
And there's a real question as to whether or not, this is going to actually prevent crime, because if you're a criminal, by definition, you already don't care about following laws.
Right. And I try to be law-abiding in that, but if they pass some of these future laws or some of this, I'm not going to report, because I don't believe that they have a right to know, because they're going to restrict what I have. They're going to create more criminals.
Well, and Joel, to your point, the frustration you're hearing from sheriffs who actually deal with criminals is the amount of time and energy and resources they're going to have to put into enforcing these laws on good, law-abiding citizens in their communities. They're already stretched thin. Now they've got to create these classes. They've got to follow people. They've got to or permit people to purchase guns. And to your point, Joel, if you don't want to notify, all right, well, now the sheriff's going to have to send somebody out to Joel's door in Littleton to knock on the door and talk about maybe some guns he didn't register, and they want to use their resources on that. I think you're seeing frustrations from sheriffs.
And I understand that. I mean, they're creating more problems. And like you said, criminals, they're going to have them no matter what.
Their point, though, is they want to create a regulatory system that's burdensome with the hopes that fewer people will have guns. I think that's a problem in itself. Joel, great call. Sure, appreciate it. Joel's line's open, 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971. We'll continue with our phone calls and texts. Now it's time for Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning. 47 and cloudy in Denver on April Fool's Day. Expecting a high of 56 today. The 7-10 5-day forecast coming up. Our top story, Ian Escalante, Rocky Mountain gun owners from Colorado, on with Jeff and Bill last hour, and says he does not know if Governor Polis is going to sign the monstrosity that is Senate Bill 3.
But if he signs this, he will no longer, not that he really is able to call himself a libertarian as is, but if he signs it now, he will really, really make a fool out of anyone who ever actually believed this guy had any sort of limited government or pro-liberty views at all.
You can go to rmgo.org to help out, and also call the governor, Governor Polis, and kindly ask him to veto it at 303-866-2885. Special elections are being held in Wisconsin and Florida today. In Wisconsin, there's a Supreme Court election, while in Florida, voters will decide two pivotal vacant House seats that could help to shift the balance of power nationally. Elon laying his life on the line. He had over 17,000 death threats just this week as he headed to Milwaukee to encourage Republicans to vote. And Scott Jennings says the right needs to get out there.
One of the things the party has to do is condition those people to show up even when Donald Trump is not the person they're voting for. Number two, I think the Elon Musk point that you played earlier about the future of Western civilization, I actually think this is a key issue the Republicans ought to lean in on. Because it's not just a one-off election when you're voting in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race or some congressional special election in Florida. These things matter. There are ripple effects. A vote here causes major implications on policy down the line. So I think Elon is actually onto something with that messaging, and I hope Republicans, especially the new ones who aren't regular voters, take it to heart.
DJT's reciprocal tariffs are set to begin tomorrow. Nearly $9 billion worth of contracts with Harvard University are being reviewed by the federal government. Education Secretary Linda McMahon accused the school of failing to protect students from anti-Semitic discrimination while promoting divisive ideologies like supporting Hamas. Police in Aurora are investigating a possible hate crime at a local synagogue. Officers, were called to the Or Avner Community Center on Sunday night after windows were broken and a door was shattered. A representative of the synagogue says the surveillance video shows that someone using a rock to break the glass came around the building. Communist Senator Cory Booker, he's now more than 12 hours into a protest of the Trump administration on the Senate floor. I wonder what he has to hide.
I read a lot of angry letters. People who were demanding of me to do something to stop them, do something different. Stand up, speak up, Senator. I'm afraid. Stand up, speak up, Senator. I'm so angry. Stand up, speak up, Senator.
Yeah, those people were probably, I don't know, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, maybe Liz Cheney. The lefties on Capitol Hill in Colorado springing a new bill on conservatives. No April Fool's Day joke here. It's a bill for a billion transgender protections, maybe fewer than a billion, I'm not sure. Colorado State Rep Jarvis Caldwell on the show. This is the honestly only a small part of it, which is amazing.
The first part of the bill brings in the custody thing. So, you have a spouse, you have custody over your child, your spouse is maybe pushing this gender ideology stuff on the child, and you say, listen, we're going to get you treatment. I think you're confused. You're 5 years old. That is enough to lose custody over your child under this bill. There's no age limits or age ranges on this, so it could be a confused 5-year-old child that you have custody of, and then you lose custody over this child because you're trying to get them treatment.
Yeah, that's great. Create more confusion and chaos and destroy what is good in society. Absolutely evil. The fools of April. The T-Wolves at the Nuggets tonight. Flames beat the Avs 3-2. Phillies beat the Rockies 6-1. Are the Broncos going to build a new stadium? If they do, they need to pay for it themselves. How's about that? CEO Greg Penner at the owners' meetings in Florida.
We're still looking at the current site, other sites around Denver, Lone Tree, Aurora. We want to create what's the best option for the next 40 or 50 years, not 10 or 20 years. We're continuing our diligence. You know, as I mentioned before, it's complex. We haven't ruled anything out.
46 in Littleton, 45 in Wheat Ridge, 47 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
A cool and unsettled stretch of weather will continue here for Denver through this work week and probably all the way through Saturday. Temperatures will be low to mid-50s today, cloudy with a few rain and snow showers around the area today and tonight, lows lower 30s. 40s and lower 50s Wednesday, a few showers of rain and snow with low to mid-40s Thursday into Thursday night, and areas of rain and snow Friday and Saturday. Weather sponsored by Colorado's Best Roofing, reminding you to protect your home from the harsh Colorado weather and schedule your free no-obligation roof inspection today at roofingcolorado.com. That's roofingcolorado.com. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
All right, I want to talk to you about my friends over at the Colorado Farm Bureau. Do you know where your last meal came from? Sure, it was a restaurant or made at home with food from the grocery store, but where did it come from before that? Chances are it came from a family farm or ranch right here in Colorado. Let's talk about Colorado agriculture. It's an industry that I'm passionate about and has been a part of Colorado before we even became a state. From family ranches on our eastern plains to local peach farms in the orchards of Palisade, they provide a wholesome and sustainable food production and contribute billions to our economy. And my friends at the Colorado Farm Bureau work hard to represent our agriculture industry. Farm Bureau members have been coming together for over 104 years to protect agriculture and help it grow and prosper. You can join them and help them continue this legacy and help support family farms and ranches by visiting coloradofarmbureau.com. That's coloradofarmbureau.com. All right, let's go back to the phone lines. Mike in Denver. Good morning, Mike. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Morning.
Good morning, guys. Hey, just wanted to call in. My real concern is the choice of verbiage that people tend to use. They tend to use the word weapon, which is really, I was educated long ago by my dad, who competed, got a gold medal in 1958 at the World Championships.
Wow.
In shooting. Bottom line is my mom was National Women's Rifle Champion in 57. That's how they met. I was Colorado Junior and Senior State Champion in the early 80s. And
Dude, you guys had the safest house on the block.
That was the way they wrote it up in the Little Golden newspaper, but it was the idea that it was a trigger-happy family. So even back in the 80s, there were people that were sending mixed messages and bad words out as to the idea of gun ownership and how it supports so many in the sporting arena. It's a wonderful, wonderful sport that gives kids responsibilities early in life. And my concern is the choice of the word weapon. If people would wash their mouth out with soap when they say that, I mean, a pencil, a knife, a pick, a hammer, all these things are weapons when wrongly used. When you turn around and say a gun or a firearm, you're fine. That's exactly what they are, and they're used in so many functional and proper ways through sportsmanship and hunting that I'm really challenged by the choice of their words. So a lot of my friends are going to know who I am that was calling in because I've been on the Front Range for 30 years now. But it's just one of those things that I'm really, if people would be a little more pro in how they choose their verbiage, it would go a long ways towards ensuring that we have gun rights.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you giving us a call. I'm intrigued because I'm raising young children. Well, I mean,
yes,
they're heading into high school now and middle school, so they're not super young. But
perfect time to learn.
And we've gone to the gun range. And what I appreciate is if you do it right, especially as a parent, it does, to your point, become a great opportunity to instill responsibility, right?
Couldn't
because
say it better.
The kid is, you're not shying away from it. You're putting into your son or daughter's hand a tool that is used to kill. And and they need to respect it as such. And so you go through the training. You talk about, always facing downfield, always looking at what's behind what you're shooting.
Well, my biggest concern with all this legislature that's starting to work its way through is they're not going to turn around and stop with all these fees and stuff to turn around and allow you to own a gun. It's the idea every couple of years you got to come back and renew your licensing, your this or that. That's just another small step towards gun ownership that we can't afford to have happen. If somebody's really serious on wanting to get into the sport and getting a first gun or whatever, and they go through the hoops, okay, they're going to understand what it takes to get there. It's sad that it'll turn some people away, so I hope Senate Bill 3 does not go through. But it's the idea of once you get them, it's just a small thing to say, well, you need every 2 years to renew your whatever, concealed weapons permit, or your this or that. It's part of even, again, the wordsmanship is just, it sucks. It's a concealed gun permit, it's, I'm sorry. So thank you so much.
No, Mike, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your experience. And the one question I've got for you is, and I think you make an accurate and a very good critique about the idea of the words that we're using in the language, referring to it as a weapon rather than a firearm. But what do you do with the people that are promoting greater gun ownership, and they're referring to it, in my opinion, constantly, and I think we see this at many gun shows as well, that this is a need for self-defense. It isn't about sporting. It isn't about hunting. It isn't about going out with your friends or your kids and enjoying the afternoon. It's about, if you don't have one of these, someone is coming to take your stuff or take your life.
Well, I'm with you, and a lot of us fall back to the patriotic thought that, it comes down to taking a weapon. You have to have a weapon to protect your family and your home. And again, I think it's an extremely poor choice of words, only because that is how the gun is being used. It is either a gun or a firearm. I mean, I'm not going to go into it, but I was knifed in a public library here locally recently, and so knives are far more popular than guns will ever be in society. They're so easy to access. Now, is the knife considered a weapon? Typically not, the way the average person talks about it, but it's the idea of how it's used. And if somebody was to invade my home, somebody could say I used a weapon, but I would still prefer to use choice of my words, such as saying I used a gun or a firearm in order to protect myself.
Yeah, I think that's idea, Mike. I like that
idea.
They
promote it. I'm with you. They promote the evil in the sport, and it's wrong.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And that's where I think that we've seen a change or a tact in the gun culture that has changed overarching in America. Because, and I've talked about it with Jeff and on the show earlier, is when I was growing up, the guns were looked at as hunting and sport. The magazines that my dad had were people in duck blinds. There were people in trees that were taking down deer, and there were skeet shooting, and there were competitions that were done that way. But the advertising and marketing I see now is more closer to, you better have one or something's coming to kill you. It's more of a self-defense issue.
Due to our times in which we live, in which it is a much more dangerous
place. But guys, if that's the case and you don't engage in hunting, then should you own a gun?
Absolutely. It's your Second Amendment right to own that firearm. And so it comes down to, again, sport shooting. It's done so much for me and my family. I had scholarships to go to college. Like I say, I tried out for 5 world teams. I was an NCAA All-American. Wow. I've had so much great fortune going down to Colorado Springs for 3 summers in a row and training at the Olympic Training Center. Those were all things that were done due to my sincere interest in the sport and promoting an Olympic sport. So I'm really challenged by the idea of how people take this.
Yeah, that's the thing, is when we're talking about the conversation here, Mike, and here's part of the thing that I think is a barrier that we have is, Jeff, and you were talking about the idea of taking your kids out for an afternoon and teaching them at the gun range. That's a different conversation if you're going out to sport, shoot, or hunt. The idea that when that dove lifts or that pheasant out of the brush, you need to be able to track and hit is different than when the guy comes through the front door of our house, you better be able to take a bead on him, my 10-year-old son or daughter, and shoot him in the face or the chest. And again, go for mid-mass, because that's going to do the most damage. That's a different conversation. And that's what I'm worried about, is that the conversations we have about the firearms.
It's practice that prevents piss-poor performance. And so it's the idea that you do need to turn around and get out with your firearm and enjoy the experience it has to offer. As Jeff put it, the responsibility that it develops in the younger generation. But it's really the idea of, again, a sport that is being taken from people that is just, it's such a wonderful thing, and people again fall back on how was this country created? It was created through the idea of that everybody should have the rights to firearm ownership and to protect themselves. Well, there's plenty of paper punchers like me, but guys that have shot just tens of thousands of rounds downrange in trying to perfect their ability to hit their target. Does that make me a better shot on whatever I am shooting? Sure.
Yeah.
But the truth is that no, those that wish to, I've known many people that have shot, and those people have only shot paper. I have had the enjoyment of using firearms in all different disciplines, and so I've gone hunting. I've gone to Africa and had the enjoy of getting an impala that I have in my living room wall. I've done things that I've had just wonderful out of this country's experiences with, and trained other people from other countries all over the world. So
that is cool. It's great to have somebody with your expertise giving us a call as well, Mike. Thank you so much. Mike's line will be open 303-696-1971. Bill, you go to messaging. I think my concern, though, is that if the only reason to own a gun is because you hunt or you do sport like Mike, that's the wrong messaging. That's not why we have the Second Amendment. The right messaging is throughout history, government has become tyrannical, and a well-armed citizenry is the reason why we have freedoms in this country. Buy a gun and keep it and learn how to use it.
Yeah, so that's a totally different, that's exactly my point. That's a completely different conversation than you have with your children. And we were talking about taking...
not mine.
Well, yeah, it is. It is a totally different conversation that you're having with the children, because if you're coming out to the range and you're saying, here we're going to train so that you can hit the skeet and you can hit the birds and you can hit the deer when we're out hunting, is different than we're going out there so you can hit the soldiers, you can hit the police, you can hit the robbers coming through the house or trying to steal our stuff. That's a different conversation, because
what's wrong with training somebody for self-defense like
Hang on. No, the reason I'm just saying, I'm not saying wrong. I'm saying different conversation, because when you go for the idea of hunting and sport, that's a motivation out of fun. You go the other one, it's a motivation out of fear. So you're teaching the kid the parameters you are setting for their exposure to the firearm is going to be one out of fun and enthusiasm and a hobby versus self-defense. You better be able to do this or someone's going to come and take your life. That's a totally different
But what's
filter.
wrong with that? I mean, and you said maybe there's nothing wrong with it, but it feels like you're saying there's something wrong with that.
Well, what I'm asking is, if we want to engender a love of firearms for the next generation, which one is more likely to have them have an affinity for guns and to want to pursue the sport and the hobby later on in life? If gun ownership and firearm ownership is defined to them based on self-defense, chances are they're not going hunting. Chances are they're not in skeet shooting. Chances are their
why
relationship.
Wouldn't you do both?
Hang on, but what I'm talking about is, what do you? So you're taking the kid out to the gun range to say, look, this is fun for hunting and this, and also you're gonna have to kill somebody with it.
Yeah,
again, that's a really strange conversation. So which one is the kid now? Which one's the kid going to lean into?
We do that with things like cars. So, hey, learn to drive provides a lot of freedom for you.
We don't teach people how to kill people with cars.
No, but
we don't teach them that.
But no, I'm telling you, the example I'm using is that with cars, you communicate two things at the same time. One, it's a tremendous amount of freedom, and it's a lot of responsibility.
But the responsibility...
But with guns, you're communicating two things at the same time. Yeah, you can have a lot of fun, but you also need to be able to defend your family if you need to.
But that would be tantamount to saying, and also you need to be able to run over people with the car if you need to.
I'm just saying that
that's what
you can communicate two things at the same time to people.
I know, but
that's what I'm pointing.
But yeah, and what I'm pointing out is, if we use the car example, that means, hey, you can go out front with your friends or run people over because you need to defend yourself. That's the issue, is using the object in order to kill or to provide defense. That's it. And when we're talking about defensive driving, it's not taking an action to engage the other person. It's taking an action to disengage, to get away from the situation where if you're using your firearm defensively, chances are you're engaging. That's the only way it's defense.
When you're hunting, aren't you killing?
But again, that's sport and hobby. It's a different thing. And so that's the idea. Is I'm talking about the delineation between sport and hobby versus framing it as a self-defense. And I'm just saying that when you expose the children to that one, I believe the hunting and the hobby engenders love of the sport and makes them more likely to be a gun owner later on in life. But if you put it as self-defense, you're going from fear. They still can be a gun owner later in life, but chances are that they are going to find the joy inside of the sport, inside of the hobby that so many firearms owners have, that I have. That's not going to happen. That doesn't happen that way when you're operating from a sense of fear. That's why I'm worried about the idea that we frame it so often as if you don't have a firearm, something bad's going to happen to you.
All right, well, join the conversation, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. Something that Bill and I both agree on that brings about a lot of joy. The Black-Eyed Pea and eating their great food, right?
Their food is so good.
Locally owned and operated by Steve and Michelle. I love this restaurant. It's home-style cooking worth going out for. With 8 locations, there's sure to be one near you. When's the last time you took the family to eat at the Black-Eyed Pea? Everything is made from scratch. Roasted turkey breast, mom's meatloaf, grilled salmon. How about homemade soups, great salads, and delicious mashed potatoes? They've got daily specials. They've got senior discounts, and better save room for dessert at the Black-Eyed Pea. They have the mile-high 1-pound chocolate cake. They bring it out. All my family and we grab spoons and forks and dive in. It's absolutely incredible. So good. The chocolate is great. Make your dinner party, rehearsal, dinner, wedding, reception, or company event a success. All with Black-Eyed Pea catering, and no matter what the occasion, Black-Eyed Pea gift cards are always great. So whether you purchase them for your spouse, birthday favors, or holiday presents, they have you covered. So keep it in Colorado. I love everything about this restaurant. Visit the Black-Eyed Pea near you. They're all along the I-25 corridor there from Colorado Springs. I think they're opening one up near Fort Collins, and then they've got them out in Lakewood and Inglewood. When I take friends to meet for lunch, we go to the Black-Eyed Pea. It's great for everybody. Grandparents love it. Our generation loves it. The kids love it. You don't get restaurants like that too often. Visit the Black-Eyed Pea of Colorado near you. All right, phone lines, lighten up. We'll get to those and more. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Phone lines are hot as we discuss Senate Bill 3 heading to the governor's desk. Is he going to sign it? This is a bill that creates a regulatory framework that's going to require you to jump through a lot of hoops to purchase a semi-automatic rifle, including taking a 2-day course, getting even a firearms purchaser card, it sounds like. You have to pass a test with a 90% success rate. Then you go through the whole rigmarole of purchasing a gun, including the background check and all that other 3-day waiting period. So is it getting too much? Is Jared Polis going to sign it? Let's talk gun rights. Let's go to Paul in Denver. Good morning, Paul. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, I like that you guys have the idea that the firearm is there to protect and serve. It's also great for recreation. If you don't have that mindset to protect your family, your community, and your country, please don't buy a firearm. Please don't own an automobile. Please stay out of the public eye. You're a danger to the rest of the people around you.
Interesting. So, do you think that the Second Amendment is going to prevent the tyranny of the government?
So I think the Second Amendment's going to prevent the tyranny of government.
Yeah.
It's all our responsibility. There's police officers that carry a firearm every single day, and they've gone through their whole career without ever shooting anybody, without ever harming anybody. Police officers who carry a firearm every day, if you don't have that mindset that you're there to prevent problems from happening, you really shouldn't own a firearm.
Yeah, I understand that. And so what I'm trying to walk down the road with you, Paul, is the idea of, will your Second Amendment rights prevent the tyranny of the government? So the government
Absolutely.
wants to become authoritarian, really? So you think
Absolutely.
you think
It's
the average
our
gun owners in America could stand up against the U.S. military?
Do you think the U.S. military would come against
I think
average gun owners?
the U.S. military is part of our citizenship. These are Americans. They're Americans who enlisted to protect this country and to protect our Constitution.
That is true,
and
but
to protect that Second Amendment
But
right.
they gave up bodily autonomy when they took the oath. They didn't ask, do you feel like going ahead and going to war? Do you feel like shooting these people? Do you feel like doing X, Y, or Z? And I'm not denigrating the military. I'm just saying that they lose a number of their rights to personal freedom when they take that oath. That's kind of part of the whole deal. So, because and this is the reason I'm asking this, is because the idea is that, and this is why I think it's a fun intellectual exercise, because if we are saying the Second Amendment is there to protect us from the tyranny of the government, what does the tyranny of the government look like? Because as Jeff said, do you think the soldiers would obey? Okay, well, if the soldiers aren't going to obey, then why do we need the second?
Yeah,
because that invalidates the tyranny of the government.
But it's all part of the question. So, but here's
but it invalidates the tyranny of the government.
Are you asking, could American citizens go up against the U.S. military in a head-on battle?
Yeah, long term.
Or does a well-armed citizenry serve as a deterrent to tyranny? Those are two separate questions in my mind.
But I think it only deters if it's a preventative. Because if the idea is that the deterrent isn't necessarily that large enough for force, if it doesn't provide enough of a deterrent, it's not a deterrent.
It is. I think it is.
Really? So you think the U.S. military would be thwarted by the American Second Amendment rights?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean,
with their missiles and their bombs and their...
in history, do you think that the most powerful military always wins?
Not necessarily. The one that has the best strategy normally wins. But I'm just saying that, and maybe Paul can talk about this, that, maybe the idea of our Second Amendment gun rights advocates and the people that own firearms, and I am one of them, standing up to the U.S. military with their missiles and their bombs and their RPGs and their drones. I personally don't give us Second Amendment exercisers much chance in a long, protracted warfare. If we talk about guerrilla, sure, but that's only given that the U.S. government or the military would not want to destroy a neighborhood. If the U.S. military thinks that a bunch of the people they're trying to tyrannize or, fall into line are in a neighborhood, okay, bomb them. Because collateral damage at that point doesn't matter. If the military is trying to take over the nation, collateral damage doesn't matter anymore. So taking out several other houses of innocence doesn't matter to drop a bomb on your house to do away with you and the rest of your gun owners. That's the exercise here, is do we really think that our guns are going to prevent the tyranny of the military and the tyranny of the
government? I think you're conflating two arguments. One, can we win in a head-to-head fight with the military, or does having a well-armed citizenry create a deterrent? I think those are two separate
But if you can't
ideas,
win, is it a
but
deterrent?
go ahead. Yeah.
Is it a deterrent if you can't win? What do you think,
Sure.
Paul? If you can't win, is it a deterrent?
One, I don't think the U.S. military would attack itself. You'd be attacking your entire family. It's not when you sign up to enlist, you're protecting your family and your country. That's exactly what you're doing. And so you're turning the gun on yourself when you say that the military is going to attack its own country. I don't think that's going to happen. Sure, a militia, yes. But this country, no. And Heike Tojo said that he would never attack the United States because there's a rifle behind every blade of grass. We're protecting our entire country as a citizen.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, Paul, I see that,
agree.
but then, and I appreciate the phone call, and what I've had the problem with that is the idea that if the military isn't going to turn on the American citizenry, then it invalidates the tyranny of the government argument.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it does, because then who's the tyranny of the government? Who's going to be the onerous group that is coming in to subjugate you if the military is not going to be there doing it? But it would necessitate an involvement of an armed force.
There's
Yes,
a
it would.
great counter argument here. What does government tyranny look like if we remove the Second Amendment?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it equates tyranny at that point, because I disagree that the Democrats here in Colorado are worried about passing laws because of gun ownership. That doesn't seem to slow them down at all. In fact, what we're talking about here is Senate Bill 3. And so that doesn't seem to slow them down at all. So the idea that what does it look like without, I disagree. And we have examples of Western civilizations across the planet that don't have the same gun rights that we do, and they don't necessarily experience the same tyranny. So I don't think it is a causal relationship at that point.
I disoree. Look at
Okay.
Australia. Australia is a great example. They did a full gun confiscation.
Yeah.
Right now, they're arresting people in the streets for free speech violations. Because who's going to stop them? Let's go to the phone lines. Mark in Aurora. Good morning, Mark. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hi. I think a better example than driving about something that could be recreational or serve some other greater purpose is something like wrestling or karate, where you do it for fun and stuff. You're wrestling in high school, you got a referee and all
Good
that.
point.
But someday, you might meet somebody on the street and they want to impose their will on you, and you're going to not let that happen. And you're trained to do it.
Yeah, I see that. I see the example, but inside of both wrestling and karate, they practice against people all the time. And where I'm drawing the delineation is the idea of hunting for sport and for and just to kill animals and eat them, and also skeet hunting. That's different than the people hunting. Like when we have the sport shooting at the Olympics, they don't have fake people running around when you're trying to shoot them. They're trying to shoot things that mimic animals, not that mimic
four
humans.
legs good, 2 legs bad. You know,
I know. I understand that with George
is.
Orwell, but the issue being that, and that's where I think I appreciate your analogy, but I think it falls apart because in both wrestling and kung fu and other martial arts, you're practicing against another human, and that's not necessarily what we do inside of firearms. Nor when you get into the sport side of firearms, that's not what they're doing. They're not going out there and seeing who's the fastest one to take down 6 people. They're doing skeet shooting. They're doing it based on animal behavior, not human behavior. And so I think the training's different.
Well, humans are animals too, I guess. And also, as far as being able to defend against tyranny by everybody owning a firearm, if you look at Cortez versus Tenochtitlan or something like that, I can't remember, Mexico City, basically, those people were so ill prepared, and they did exactly what the United States is doing right now. They invited them in. So they got to recon the place, and Cortez wiped them out. They couldn't defend themselves against modern weapons at all. And so
can we defend ourselves against modern weapons? And what I'm talking about I'm talking about RPGs, I'm talking about drones, I'm talking about missiles, I'm talking about airplanes.
I love how we just literally left Afghanistan and a bunch of tribal people with basic rifles beat the army, and we don't think Americans could take on our own army.
But we left them not because they beat us. We left them not because they beat us, but because we signed a withdrawal. It had nothing to do with us walking away because they kicked our butt. It's not what happened.
But we can defend ourselves against a tyrannical government, and Randy Weaver kind of proved that at Ruby Ridge. He held them off. If he wouldn't have held them off, that Lon Harucci would have just gunned them all down. And
here's the thing.
he
On
was
Ruby
able to
Ridge,
hold
hang
them
on
off.
Ruby Ridge.
At least he at least got a trial out of it.
I understand that, but on Ruby Ridge, if the government decided that they didn't need to live, and the idea, and again, we're talking about tyranny of the government. If the government decides that they can take away those type of rights from the citizenry, they don't hold back based on how they're going to go after the people at Ruby Ridge. They're going to launch a missile into them, and then boom, done. That's it. It'll take one drone strike. Done. That's the thing that I'm talking about. Is I don't think
that
these are
in Afghanistan.
No, they never. No, nobody ever does that. They don't. Nobody goes after their enemy with their biggest weapon. They go after them with what they believe is appropriate, and probably overkill, but appropriate. They don't bust out a nuke.
No, but the idea is they have the ability. We don't, as far as the citizenry. And that's what I'm talking about, is it's not going to be an equal fight. The idea that our Second Amendment rights are going to hold back the tyranny of the government.
I mean, just because they're the bigger army doesn't mean they always win. Mark, I appreciate the call. Thanks so much. We've got other calls to get to as we wrap up the show here. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. It's a spicy debate on gun rights as Senate Bill 3 heads to the governor's desk. Should Jared Polis sign this restriction on semi-automatic gun purchases? It's a long rigmarole that you're going to have to jump through in order to purchase one moving forward. Let's go to the phone lines. Robert, Denver. Good morning, Robert. You're on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, good morning, fellas. I just want to make a quick analogy, if you will. You've got to get this 2 days worth of training. You've got to get this gun buyer ID card. You have to acquire, this accreditation or this certification, if you will, to do this. But let's just for a moment substitute to buy a gun with to vote. Are you still okay with it?
So you'd have to, in order to vote, you'd have to buy a gun.
No. In order to vote, you have to go to a 2-day training course, and then you have to get a certification or a permission slip from the government, basically, to go vote. And then you got to go pass a background check, and then you have to have a waiting period after that, and you have to pay a fee for this because the background check isn't free.
Yeah.
And then you have to pay taxes on it.
And Robert,
right?
what's more dangerous, your right to carry a weapon or your right to vote?
I think they're equally dangerous, to be perfectly honest with you, because I've carried a gun every day for the last 22 years. And outside of the range, you want to guess how many times it's ever cleared leather?
How many times have you voted in the past 2 decades or so?
Every single election.
Okay. So they're not necessarily totally analogous. I like what you're saying about it, and here's the idea is, if we were talking about the training and the ID and the certification for voters, I can get there with you on one condition. The politicians have to do it first. So once we license them and train them and make them tested and have them tested,
I'm for
after
that. They're the
then I might be able
dumbest
to get with you,
people.
man.
We're putting the dumbest people in office.
I would be wholly on board with you in that particular respect. My point is that
you make a good point, though.
The right to keep and bear arms is enshrined in the Constitution, and according to our founders, it was a natural right. It was not something that was given or granted by government.
Right.
It was a natural right, as is the right to free speech, the right to freely assemble, the right to practice the religion of your choice, or no religion at all, the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure, etc. They consider these things to be natural rights, and the Constitution, specifically the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, were nothing more than an enshrinement and a recognition by government that these were rights inherent to the people.
But they did put a restriction on that Second Amendment.
Regulated militia.
I know, but in the Second Amendment, it has the words "well regulated" because everybody always throws up
shall not be
infringed. I understand that, but in the statement, it says "well regulated." So regulations are baked in. We can debate that as far as regulations, but it's baked into the amendment.
But no.
Yes,
what is regulated, though? Is the militia regulated or is the firearm regulated?
For years, it was the idea that the ownership of the firearm was tied into the participation in the militia. But then the courts have changed that in recent history. But if we go back to how,
the Heller
but if we,
decision was very specific.
I understand that. But if we go back, back to the origins and we go back to the founding fathers and the intention, that wasn't necessarily the intention, and that's not what the courts had said for over 100 years.
Heller actually goes back to the original.
No, but Heller does some mental gymnastics.
If we carry that back, though, let's look at all of the contemporaneous writings of the founders, okay? And, in fact, the law that was specifically passed regarding who is the militia and who is the militia. The militia
it's
is
us.
the people.
Yeah, it is, but the militia also had to go through training.
Sure appreciate
and we're not
it.
going through training.
All right, if you missed any of it, go to 710knus.com to download the podcast. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS.